Hey everyone, thanks so much for stopping by. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
When Monkey D. Luffy was 7, he boldly declared that Princess Usagi would one day be his queen. Years later, that childish promise becomes reality. As Usagi turns 21, a now 22-year-old Luffy arrives with his bewildered crew for a royal wedding that will shake both seas and stars. With sailors Tenshi, pirates, and the unexpected presence of Ace and Sabo, chaos, laughter, and heartfelt moments unfold before and during the ceremony, proving that some promises, no matter how impossible, are never meant to be broken. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is The Princess and the Pirate by Saranghae Tenshi. Respect to author.
Chapter 1, Kurorogu, Chibi Luffy meets Chibi Usagi G. Once a beautiful kingdom, now a ruined one, and all because of the evil darkness called the Negaverse. It was supposed to be a happy occasion, the marking of an engagement that would entwine an alliance with Earth and the Moon. Yet, as the Negaverse struck, the only known survivors were the Queen of the Moon Kingdom and the Silver Alliance and her two faithful cat advisors from the planet Mao. The Queen of the Moon Kingdom, Silver Alliance gathered all of her strength and brought forth a blinding silver light that eliminated the Negaverse for good. She, however, fell onto a column once her energy left her, panting for air. "Queen Serenity," shouted a female voice as a black cat and a white cat ran over to her. "Luna," said the now-known Queen Serenity. "Artemis." "Yes," said the two. "The silver crystal can bring peace into the world when used by someone with a pure heart," said Queen Serenity, "but, when it is used by someone with an evil heart, it immediately becomes a frightening weapon." "That's enough," said the black cat, "please don't talk anymore." "With the power of the silver crystal," said Queen Serenity, "I was able to destroy Metalia and her forces. However, I can't go on without my precious daughter." "Queen Serenity?" questioned the white cat. "Princess Serenity and all of the other sailor guardians," said Queen Serenity, "may your future lives on Earth be filled with love, kindness, and hope." With that, Queen Serenity lifted a small crystal-like orb from her hand, leaving it to float. The small crystal, known as the silver crystal, floated before lifting itself up into the sky. The crystal shone once more in silver light before slowly encasing everyone, especially the surprised queen and the two cat advisors, in a bubble that floated towards the sky. Queen Serenity smiled before finally saying, "This is my final wish. Live in peace and happiness." "Mama," cried out a childlike girl's voice. Footsteps could be heard running down the hallway before opening the door to a child's room. There, in front of the door, was a woman who had long silvery white hair that was up in two odango dumplings. She also had kind and worried silver eyes and was wearing a white silk pajama dress. Looking for any signs of danger, she relaxed when she saw there was none. She looked at the bed that had a big stuffed bunny sitting in one corner, as if it was protecting its precious owner. Said owner was a little girl of 6 who had mid-shoulder layered golden blonde hair and wearing a matching pink with clouds pajama set. The little girl had tears in her crystal blue eyes as she tried to hold back her sobs. The woman walked into the child's bedroom and sat to the side before pulling the little girl to her side. "What is the matter, my sweet little bunny?" questioned the woman. "Mama," sobbed the little girl, "I had a bad dream of ruined buildings and you dying." "Oh, my sweet little bunny," said the woman who pulled the little girl closer, "that is just a bad dream. You know that we are alive and well within our floating kingdom." I know, Mama," sobbed the little girl, but, it felt real." "Dry your tears, my little bunny," said the woman, "and do not worry. Nothing will get to us. Do you know why?" Because," hiccuped the little girl, "of the Sailor G Guardians." "Exactly, my little bunny," said the woman. "Now, since it is morning, would you like breakfast before we meet with some special people?" "Special people, Mama?" questioned the little girl. Said the woman, "someone who will play with you." At the word play, the little girl started to bounce up and down on her bed in excitement. She didn't really have any friends her age, besides her best friend named Hotaru. The woman laughed joyously as she told the little girl to get ready for the day. Once the woman left the little girl alone, the woman wasn't surprised to see her faithful and most trusted guardian friend in the halls. This guardian friend had knee-length dark green hair with some in a bun and the rest hanging down freely. Looking into red eyes, the woman gestured for her guardian friend to walk with her. "How is the High Princess?" questioned the friend. "She had a dream of the destruction of the Silver Millennium," sighed the woman. Do you believe the Heim is remembering, Queen Serenity? Questioned the friend. I don't believe so, Setsuna, said the now-known Queen Serenity. The Ginzuisho sent all of us to live a fulfilled life, except that my precious little bunny is the same age as Saturn. She isn't even the same age as the inners or the outers. Well, the Ginzuisho has always worked in mysterious ways, said the now-known Setsuna. Maybe it wants what's best for Serenity Heim. I guess, sighed Queen Serenity before saying, now, my dear friend, shall we see if our esteemed guests arrived yet? You are not thinking about that, are you, my queen? Questioned Setsuna. Queen Serenity smiled mysteriously as she walked down the hallway towards the throne room while Setsuna sighed in exasperation. It would be a while before their guests arrived to their kingdom after all. Somewhere where water is everywhere. Jichin, Grandpa, said a childlike boy's voice, where are you taking us? Yeah, Ojik Gramps, echoed two other childlike boys' voice. You brats, shut it, said an old man's voice, you'll know when we get there. There, sailing on the waters, was a standard marine ship. This ship looked like a cruiser-like vessel that has 3 masts, 2 with 2 sails and 1 with a lateen sail, along with the marine symbol and name painted on the sides. On the marine ship were various people dressed in the standard marine outfit. However, there were 4 people who stood out. One was a tall, tanned, broad-chested, muscular old man, named Monkey D. Garp, and had a beard and a scar over his left blue eye. The other 3 were 3 boys. The first boy, Ace, was 10 years old and had curly black hair, black eyes, and childish freckles. The second boy, Sabo, was the same age as Ace and had round eyes, a missing tooth, and short curly blonde hair. The last boy, Luffy, was 7 years old and had short, messy black hair and a scar with 2 stitches underneath his left black eye. Luffy was complaining about being out at sea with his Jichin of all people when he could be exploring while Ace and Sabo glared at Garp. They also didn't know why they were dragged into whatever Garp wanted to show them, but they couldn't do anything since he easily picked all 3 boys up with one arm before heading to the ship they were now sailing in. Land ho, called out one of the marines. Now, brats, said Garp, I want you 3 to be on your best behavior. Why? Questioned the 3 boys. You'll understand once we get there, said Garp as the ship docked. Once the ship docked to what the 3 boys knew as an unknown island, the Marines, Garp, and the 3 boys were greeted by a tomboyish woman who was wearing a sailor outfit. This outfit was mostly navy blue with her front bow being yellow. They all would have thought the person in front of them was actually a boy, but the outfit and wearing a golden hoop on both earlobes and lipstick on her lips told them otherwise. This woman also wore long, knee-high, high-heeled navy blue boots. Yet, the telling of the woman was her weapon at her hip, a sword that was sheathed in jewels and a golden handle. The said woman looked at the group before looking straight at Garp. You Garp? Questioned the woman in a sharp tone. Yes, said Garp, and you would be Uranus, said the woman, and that is all you are going to be getting. I see, said Garp, who kind of deflated by the answer. And these 3? Questioned Uranus. My grandkids, said Garp. This way, said Uranus, your crew will have to stay on the ship while you and your hesitant voice grandkids sharp tone used again come meet the queen. Queen, exclaimed Luffy in awe. Yeah, Squirt, said Uranus with a smirk, who did you think you were going to meet today? Wahahaha, laughed Garp awkwardly, I didn't really tell them anything. Of course, you didn't, you old man, grumbled Uranus before clasping her hands together. Anyways, let's go. The queen is waiting. With that, the 3 boys and Garp followed the mysterious Uranus. The 4 found out that where they were was just the port, but when walking deeper, they still didn't reach the actual palace until much later. At the palace. Finally, after a 30-minute walk, Uranus and guests arrived at the palace. The palace, unknown to the sailor guardians besides Pluto and the queen, was a replica of their lost home from the Moon Kingdom. Garp and the boys could see tall pillars of white as they continued to follow Uranus to the throne room. Luffy almost stopped when he heard a girl's giggle from somewhere, but he was pushed in the back by Ace with Sabo looking at Luffy curiously. Once all 5 finally found the tall doors to the throne room, Uranus pushed the doors open with one hand and gestured for them to go inside. There, the 3 boys stared in awe at the pretty woman who was wearing a white dress with a bow on the top, a gold crescent brooch adorning the center of said bow. Queen Serenity, said Uranus as she knelt down, presenting Monkey D. Garp and his 3 grandchildren. Thank you, Uranus, said Queen Serenity gently, I do believe that Neptune is waiting for you. Please send in Venus so that she may escort the little boys to my daughter and Saturn. Of course, Your Highness, said Uranus as she stood up and left through another door to the right. Now then, said Queen Serenity, as Uranus told you, my name is Queen Serenity Sakino IV. May I know who the world government has sent towards my kingdom and I Coughs of course, said Garp, my name is Monkey D. Garp, one of Marine's vice admirals. The world government has sent me to see if you are a threat or not. I see, said Queen Serenity, my kingdom has always been floating. However, sometimes we would land in a deserted waterway so that my daughter can experience the waters. Is that a bad thing? Oh, of course not, said Garp, it's just that your kingdom suddenly appeared, and we had no way that you were one of these floating islands, like the ones in the Grand Line. I'm sorry to interrupt, Your Highness, said a female voice, but, you have called for me. Everyone turned to see a new female appear. She was wearing a similar outfit to Uranus, but her main color was orange while her back bow was yellow and her front bow a navy blue. She also had one stripe on her collar while her feet were in orange heels with ankle straps. Everyone could see that she had blue eyes and blonde hair, her hair being down with a simple red bow in it. Queen Serenity smiled at the newcomer as she used one of her hands to beckoning for her to come over. Said female walked into the room and knelt down in front of Queen Serenity, showing her respect. Yes, Venus, I have, said Queen Serenity, I have 3 boys here who will be going to my daughter to play. They do not need to stay in a stuffy room like this one while the adults discuss things. Of course, Your Majesty, said the now-known Venus as she turned to the 3 boys, hello boys. I am Venus, and I will be taking you to where my home is. A real-life princess, questioned Luffy with awe. But of course, said Venus with a wink. With that, Venus ushered the 3 boys out of the throne room. Garp looked apprehensive as he watched his grandkids, 2 not by blood, leave with a total stranger. Queen Serenity, however, vouched for her sailor guardians being wonderful people and will protect his grandchildren well. With that notion, Garp turned back to Queen Serenity and both started talking about what the island was, who actually lived on the island, and so forth. With Venus and the 3 boys. Venus, exclaimed an excited girl's voice. When Venus ushered the boys out, she took them down another long hallway until they arrived at a large green field that were filled with all sorts of flowers. The boys could see 2 little girls playing tag with each other, not really worrying on dirtying their clothes. One girl had short dark purple hair and violet eyes while the other had mid-shoulder layered golden blonde hair and crystal blue eyes. The one who called Venus was the blonde-haired one as she ran over and hugged Venus's legs. Venus gave a gentle smile before patting the little girl's head. She then turned to address the 3 boys. Boys, please meet Princess Serenity Sakino V, said Venus as she hugged the little girl closer to her, and the other girl is Tomo Hotaru, Serenity's best friend. Hello, said the now-known Hotaru shyly. Now, boys, said Venus, please introduce yourselves. Hello, said Ace, name's Portgas D. Ace, name's Sabo, said Sabo with a grin, nice to meet you. Both boys chuckled inwardly when they were granted with a, though clumsy, curtsy from the 2 girls. They thought the girls looked kind of cute, but they would voice that out. When everyone turned to the last boy, Luffy looked at all of them before looking straight at the princess. There, he saw the prettiest girl ever, with her shiny golden hair and her dressed in a pink shirt and jean overalls with a crescent moon at the left corner. Luffy, blessed his little heart, never knew how to filter out what he wanted to say and just went with the flow of things. So, it came to quite a shock for everyone present when he said his introduction. Hi, said Luffy, my name is Monkey D. Luffy, I'm going to be king of the pirates, and you. Points at the little Serenity are going to marry me and become my queen. Baka idiot, bemoaned Ace with Sabo sighing. As for the girls, exclaimed Minako with the 2 girls looking at Luffy in confusion. Shishishi, laughs little Luffy with a big grin towards little Serenity. Chapter 2, Years Past, Grown-up Monkey D. Luffy. Hi, said Luffy, my name is Monkey D. Luffy, I'm going to be king of the pirates, and you. Points at the little Serenity are going to marry me and become my queen. Little Serenity blinked in confusion and was about to turn to her best friend on what Luffy meant when the other 2, Ace and Sabo, started to hit Luffy over the head. Apparently, Luffy wasn't supposed to tell everyone that he was going to become a pirate. He also shouldn't have proclaimed that little Serenity would be his bride to be in the future as well. Luffy whined as Sabo and Ace started to tell Luffy off for deciding things, especially with a princess in their homeland. None of the children saw Venus run back to the throne room to tell the queen about what had happened when Ace and Sabo started to beat up Luffy for his proclamation. But Ace, whined Luffy, Sabo. She's very pretty, and the king of the pirates should have a pretty queen. Stop speaking, Baka, said Ace as he started to stretch Luffy's face with his hands. I'm sorry, girls, said Sabo, our brother Luffy has a mind of his own and always says things without thinking. I have 2 questions, said Hotaru. Hi, answered the boys who stopped, Luffy's cheeks still being stretched. First of all, how can his cheeks stretch so much, asked Hotaru. It's because I ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi gum gum fruit, confessed Luffy. And that is, questioned little Serenity. It was there that the 5 children sat down on the green grass for a conversation. Luffy was the one who claimed little Serenity's left side while Ace and Sabo sat on the other side of the 2 girls and Luffy. There, Ace and Sabo started to tell the 2 little girls about the devil fruits and what the 3 classifications of the devil fruits had. Luffy was also quick to tell the little girls his story of meeting the famous pirate named Red-Haired Shanks and how he entrusted his straw hat to him before departing from their home island, Fuchsia Village. The children were so engrossed with the boys' tales that they didn't notice Queen Serenity, Venus, and Garp coming towards them. "Brat!" shouted out Garp. "Ah, Jichin!" cowered Luffy behind the 2 young girls and his older brothers. "I told you not to embarrass me," said Garp sternly. Now, Garp-san," said Queen Serenity, "they are still children. It is best not to press your ideals so forcefully." Garp sighed before nodding his head. He was not going to make Queen Serenity mad when he doesn't know if she had any powers of her own. Queen Serenity, on the other hand, smiled gently while folding her dress down before sitting next to the children. Although she doesn't know what a pirate really was, Garp's description being a bit biased after all, Queen Serenity could feel that all 3 boys were pure of heart, just like her precious daughter. The daughter launched herself on top of Queen Serenity's lap before telling her all about the boys' adventures. "Oh my," said Queen Serenity as she heard about how the boys beaten a big and angry animal all on their own. "That meat sure was good," said a salivating Luffy. "Luffy," growled Ace as he hit the back of his head, "stop drooling in front of the queen." "Itai," whined Luffy. "I am sure that was a good lunch for all 3 growing boys," said Queen Serenity, "but, I must confess. I came here urgently because of what little Luffy said." "Huh?" questioned Luffy, "What I said?" "Hi," said Queen Serenity, "you know that it is bad manners to make your own decisions without talking it over with everyone, especially your guardians." Luffy puffed his chest out before pouting. He really wanted the princess as his bride because she was really pretty. Queen Serenity could tell that Luffy wasn't exactly listening as he stared at her daughter who was on her lap. Apparently, even the queen couldn't get Luffy to let others have a say on a decision, especially as big as this. Queen Serenity sighed before turning her daughter to face her. "Dear, little bunny," said Queen Serenity, "you have heard his proclamation to marry you. What do you say, daughter?" "Why you are going to let your daughter decide this important decision?" asked a surprised Garp. "I don't see why not," said Queen Serenity, "she is a smart, little girl and will make the right decision that is right for her." "D-demo," said little Serenity, "what happens if I make a wrong choice?" "That is for me to decide, my little bunny," said Queen Serenity. Little Serenity scrunched her nose up cutely and thought. On the one hand, she got to learn something new besides the world government and the Marines. On the other hand, she didn't like how Luffy proclaimed something without letting her have a say, even if she doesn't really know what marriage or engagement means. She's only 6 years old, after all. Her crystal blue eyes looked at her best friend, but she was no help. Hotaru was just smiling at her without saying a word. Her eyes looked at the other occupants in the grounds before her eyes landed on Luffy. Luffy, even though he was confident with himself, shifted slightly when those pretty eyes looked at him. Little Serenity stared at Luffy before turning back towards her mother. "I guess I can see myself with him in the future, Mama," said little Serenity before a small red hue covered her cheeks. Besides, Luffy is kind of cute." "And what about us?" questioned Sabo and Ace. "Not saying any more," said little Serenity as she pulled one eye down and stuck her tongue out. "Then, it is decided," said Queen Serenity with a small giggle. "Garp-san, shall we go back to the throne room and draw out a contract?" Bleary black eyes slowly opened as the person felt herself shift. Looking around, said person could see the grounds all cracked and crumbled. Said person also looked to see himself being carried carefully over a strong shoulder while another carried a wounded person. The person knew who these 3 were, of course. The wounded one had medium-length black woolly hair, prominent lips, and a long nose. The one carrying the wounded was an extremely tall skeleton dressed in formal attire complete with top hat and cane. The one carrying the newly awoken person was furry all around and had reindeer antlers on top of its head. The person, however, called out the running people's name. "Chopper," said the person. "Brook." "Luffy," said Chopper, the reindeer, as he still ran with the skeleton, "you were half dead. Usopp was banged up, but he tried to help you." "Arigato, Chopper," said the now known older Luffy, "you can rest now." "You sure, Luffy?" questioned Chopper worriedly. "You go back to Sunny," said Luffy as Chopper let Luffy off of his shoulder, "do not worry. I'm fine." It was there that Usopp, the wounded one, started to wake up. Even with injuries, Usopp tried to tell Luffy that he was sorry he was never good at anything in the crucial moments. Luffy, however, told Chopper and Brook to look after Usopp as he walked towards a colossus that was the size of a mountain. Yelling out the name Bullet, Luffy activates fourth gear, which turned him into a big balloon with one of his fists turning huge and coated with a black-red color. It, however, wasn't enough as he crash-landed in front of a few people. One was his older brother Sabo, who was now 25 years old and was wearing his signature outfit with his top hat with goggles over the band. Another was a slim man, named Trafalgar Law, who has short dark hair and gray eyes. Another was a marine officer, named Smoker the White Hunter, who had white hair and brown eyes. The last one was a woman, named Boa Hancock, who was very tall and had slender with long black hair that extends past her waist with locks of hair that frame her face down to her chin and black eyes. "Luffy," exclaimed Boa as she ran towards him, "I was looking for you." "Are you hurt?" "Hancock," said Luffy with an easy smile, "it's been a long time." "Things are going well." "Wah," said Boa with her hands covering her mouth, "he cares more for me than for himself." Dramatically falls to the ground. "I can die in peace." Questioned and amused Sabo, "Should I be telling?" "Don't you dare, Sabo," said Luffy with a glare. "Demo, it would be funny to see what she would do," said Sabo who was still amused. "She'll get upset," pouted Luffy, "and that is going to lead to shudders." "Ah, we wouldn't want that," said a thoughtful Sabo. "Fine. I won't talk about Hancock." "Shishishi," laughed Luffy, "Arigato, Sabo." Smoker, Trafalgar, and Boa didn't know who she was, but it was clear that it was someone very dear to Luffy and Sabo. Boa, however, clenched her hand into a fist in jealousy when she heard Sabo teasing Luffy about someone that wasn't her. Yet, before she could question her darling Luffy, Trafalgar got everyone to focus on the job at hand. He tells the group that he has a plan. Luffy, of course, agrees immediately before smiling. Trafalgar was adamant that Luffy listened to the plan, but that didn't happen. Once the group agreed to help, Luffy went off on his own to attack Bullet once more. "Baka," said Trafalgar with disgust, "he never listens to anything." "Well, that's not going to be my problem starting in the next 2 weeks, said Sabo in amusement. "Nani?" questioned Smoker. "Ah, not my place to say," said Sabo with one eye closed and his index finger in front of his mouth. "Anyways, Law. What was your plan?" "His hockey is overkill," said Trafalgar. "Demo, I can make us an opening with my powers. Afterwards, take the opportunity to attack and cut away his creations." "And, after that?" questioned Sabo. "The less controlled material," said Trafalgar, "the less strong. It will finish him before he recovers. We each will have a chance." "Why do I always get stuck with the worst plans?" groaned Smoker. It took a while, but all 5, plus one other that looked like a clown, finally succeeded in defeating Bullet. The winning factor that helped out was the delayed attack, courtesy of Luffy's Nakama, friend companion, Usopp. Luffy, who flew down to the ground, was confronted by Boa Hancock, the female wondering if Luffy was alright. Luffy smiled happily as he held up the small treasure chest that Bullet had with him. Though, it didn't take long for Luffy to open the chest to see that it was an eternal pose, a special type of compass used in the Grand Line that always points to the same island no matter how long it stayed elsewhere, and for Luffy to destroy it by clenching his fist. It also didn't take long for Luffy to meet up with his crew aboard his ship named Sunny. "Luffy," called out many voices from the ship. "We can escape with the map Robin found," said an orange-hair, brown-eyed female, Nami. "Demo," said a brightly colored blue-hair cyborg, Frankie, "Buster Call is there." "We're eventually stuck," said Chopper. Though there were many Marines in front of them, the biggest threat being a man with black hair and a very thin beard named Admiral Kizaru, Luffy and his Nakama all managed to escape due to a big fire wall that created a path for them, but also blocked the Marines. Luffy blinked when he saw that before turning around to see Sabo on his ship. The other crew members looked at Sabo weirdly as well. They didn't understand why Sabo, the Revolutionary Army's chief of staff, was on board their ship when the revolutionary ship was also sailing close by. Sabo grinned at everyone, but didn't say anything, until much later. Because after they escaped with the other pirates from that island they stopped at, the crew turned to Luffy to ask him what was in the small chest. "So, Luffy," said a cropped green-haired, scar over his left-eyed male, Zoro. "Nani?" questioned Luffy. "What was in that small treasure chest?" questioned Zoro. "Oh," said Luffy with a finger up his nose, "an eternal pose to Laugh Tale where One Piece is." "Eternal pose," started Nami. "To Laugh Tale?" questioned shoulder-length black hair, blue-eyed female, Robin. Nodded Luffy. "Demo, I broke it." "questioned Chopper in shock, "You broke it?" "Yeah," said Luffy with a large grin. Why did you do that? Shouted Nami as she grabbed Luffy and started to shake him. Are you stupid or what? Ha ha ha, laughed Sabo. And you, said a blonde-haired, gray blue-eyed male, Sanji, why is a revolutionary man even here for? Blinked Sabo as his laughter stopped. Luffy didn't tell you. Tell us what? Questioned a jumpy Usopp. Best if he tells you, said Sabo as he tipped his hat down a bit, hiding his smile. Luffy, questioned Brook. Oh, yeah, said an absent-minded Luffy. With that, Luffy proceeded to take his straw hat off of his head. It was there that Nami remembered a vivre card, a small piece of white paper, was added to Luffy's straw hat after she fixed it the first time, yet she still doesn't know how this particular vivre card survived everything Luffy did as a pirate. This vivre card, this paper of life, was also stared at from the other crew members. Sabo, however, knew this vivre card was made to find and commented on how Luffy, of all people, would place it in his straw hat. It's for safekeeping, pouted Luffy before turning to Frankie. Follow this vivre card. Luffy, said Sabo amusedly, you have to tell them why instead of ordering them about. Demo, Sabo, whined Luffy, I want to get to her as soon as possible. Baka, said Sabo with a shake of his head, you waited this long for her. You can wait for another week beforehand. Anyo, said Robin, who exactly are you talking about? Said Luffy who didn't explain anything to the crew just yet until, my fiancé, of course. Nani, shouted the entire crew, Sabo laughing, fiancé. Chapter 3, Years Past, Grown-up Serenity Usagi G. I guess I can see myself with him in the future, mama, said little Serenity before a small red hue covered her cheeks, besides, Luffy is kind of cute. With little Serenity's decision, Queen Serenity giggled at how her little girl had a crush on Luffy, and so soon. It seemed as though Queen Serenity will not be going out of her way to find the missing Prince of Earth if little Luffy has anything to say about it. It was after little Serenity's decision that led Queen Serenity and Monkey D. Garp walking back to the throne room to talk more, but to also set up the betrothal contract between one Princess Serenity Sakino V and one Monkey D. Luffy. Venus, on her part, was still gaping at what had transpired before sprinting off to tell the other inners, her inner teenage self bubbling to come out from this development. As the adults left, the 5 children were left to their own devices. Luffy looked at his brothers before asking, what was that all about? Baka, exclaimed Ace who proceeded to pull Luffy's cheeks once more painfully, you are asking what this is all about when you were the one who started it. Itai, whined Luffy. I guess congratulations are in order, said Sabo as he looked at the little princess, so, congratulations princess. You have a Baka as a future husband. Arigato thank you questioned little Serenity with a tilt to her head, I think. While Sabo and Hotaru were congratulating and teasing Serenity respectively, Ace was the one that was left to tell Luffy on what had happened when Queen Serenity was here. Ace, with an angry tick over one of his eyes, told Luffy that because of him proclaiming that little Serenity was going to marry him, the queen came over to talk to Luffy and little Serenity. Ace also told him congratulations that left Luffy confused until Ace told him that he just snagged a princess for a bride. Luffy, with his little mind, had a scrunched look of concentration on his little face that made him look cute as he tried to understand what Ace told him. When his mind finally comprehended that, yes, he indeed got his bride, Luffy's face let out a huge grin before using his stretching powers and fly over to where little Serenity is. Honto ni, really, exclaimed an excited Luffy, you agreed to be mine. Nodded little Serenity with a bit of fear on her face. Baka, exclaimed Ace who pulled Luffy away from the princess, you are going to scare your future wife with your antics. Shishishi, laughed Luffy, sorry, Usagi. I'm just really happy you are going to be my queen once I'm king of the pirates. Usagi, questioned Hotaru before correcting Luffy, her name is Serenity. Said Luffy with a shake of his head, that queen lady called her little bunny, so that's what I'm calling my future wife. Usagi is cuter than that long name, too. With that claim, little Serenity sniffed a bit. She thought her name was cute. Besides, it is the same name as her mama's. Hotaru gaped at Luffy before glaring at him harshly. No one makes her best friend feel like her name wasn't cute. Little Hotaru didn't know it, but she was faintly glowing lavender as she glared at Luffy. Only little Serenity, with little tears in her eyes, saw it, but that was to be expected. Her mama told her that her best friend was destined to become the soldier of Saturn, whatever that was. Just before little Serenity could wail and before little Hotaru could glow more as her hand turned into a fist to punch Luffy, it was Sabo and Ace that hit the back of Luffy's head, hard. Both little girls blinked, Hotaru's glow stopping, as they saw the scene before them. Baka, shouted out Ace. Luffy no baka idiot Luffy, shouted out Sabo, you don't tell a girl that her name is not cute. That is plain rude, too, yelled out Ace. Demo, cried out Luffy in pain. No buts, shouted the two boys in unison, you just said that the queen's name isn't cute as well. Remember, the queen's name is the same as your future bride. Now, apologize, said Sabo fiercely as he turned Luffy to Little Serenity. Luffy pouted before he actually looked at Little Serenity's face. Her eyes looked much bigger as tears were still gathering in her eyes. Luffy winced when he saw his future queen was about to cry. Stretching his arms, Luffy wrapped them around Little Serenity and pulled her towards him. Little Serenity blinked back her tears as her eyes widened in surprise. Sabo and Ace just sighed because that was Luffy for you. He'll stretch his arms just because he can. Hotaru narrowed her eyes as she watched Luffy. If he makes her best friend almost cry again, Gomen, said Luffy, I said something hurtful to you. I forgive you, said Little Serenity. Demo, said Luffy. Oh no, groaned Ace and Sabo. I'm still calling you Usagi, said Luffy, because it's easier to say than your long name for a 7-year-old like me. Exclaimed the little girls. Shishishi, laughed Luffy as he hugged Little Serenity closer, my little Usagi. A female groan resonated around a bedroom as a knock on the door resonated within the room. There, on the bed, was a female whose golden hair grew out and fell over the bed frame. Bleary crystal blue eyes glared at the door where the knocking was coming from before groaning again. She had such a wonderful dream about the first time she was called Usagi. Though, to this day, Usagi was the only name that a little boy long ago would only use. The female didn't mind as she sat up on her bed and rubbed her eyes so that they would be fully awake. A knock came once more as a male voice came through as well. Rise and shine, sister-in-law of mine, sang the male voice. Groaned the female before complaining, Ace. I want to sleep more. Come on, Sarah, whined the now-known Ace, Hotaru won't show me any of her moves unless you're there as well. Not my problem that you can't control your girlfriend, sang out the now-adult Serenity. It was true that the female was now the 20-year-old Serenity who her close friends call her a variation of her name or, in Luffy's case, Usagi. Luffy is still the only one that would call Serenity that name as others, like Luffy's brother Ace, would call her Serena, Sarah, Rena, or Renity. Serenity could also remember how Ace came to live with them on their Silver Moon Kingdom as well. She shuddered when Hotaru started to scream out and turn dark purple before vanishing, only to reappear with a dead body of Portgas D. Ace. Though, when that happened, Mercury sprang into action, Hotaru hot on her heels, before reviving Ace. Once Ace was alive once more, Ace would bemoan for losing his Mara Mara no Mi flame fruit until her mother smiled and asked if he would become Serenity's guardian. Ace jumped up at the chance to protect his soon-to-be sister-in-law but asked how. It wasn't long that her mother revealed a secret that the Silver Moon Kingdom kept from the three boys in Garp all those years ago. They had the power of the Ginzuisho, a powerful artifact that when used, can bestow the person great power and immortality. Though, that is probably why that whenever I saw the Sailor Guardians, they looked as though they had never aged while Hotaru and I did, thought an amused Serenity. Sarah, whined Ace, Hotaru is not my girlfriend. That's not what Venus said when Hotaru awakened her Saturn powers, sang Serenity once more. Shut up, bemoaned Ace as his face lit up with a red hue, and please hurry. I want to try this new sword technique against Hotaru. Fine, my fire guardian, said an amused Serenity through the door, be there soon. Finally, said Ace, you and Lou are the same. Hard to wake you both up. Says the one with narcoleptic, shot back Serenity. Serenity giggled as she heard Ace grumble about them reviving him but not disappearing his narcolepsy. Serenity stretched before getting out of her bed as she recalled that the powers of the Ginzuisho made Ace become a Mars guardian. She thought it could have been because of his fruit's power from before, but the Ginzuisho always worked in mysterious ways. Shrugging and changing into a red shirt and shorts that was similar to Luffy's previous outfit before he set sail and putting her long hair into a ponytail, Serenity smiled in the mirror once more before going to the door. She opened the door to see Ace wearing his standard outfit of an open front light green shirt, black knee-length shorts with an eyelet-studded orange belt, and black boots. Taking one look at Serenity, Ace snickered at her choice of outfit. What? Asked Serenity. Nothing, said Ace, Demo, portraying Lou much, sister-in-law. Shut up, pouted Serenity with her cheeks turning red. It's cute that you are wearing his colors, Sarah, chuckled Ace, and, it also shows how strong your relationship is. Said Serenity, remember he tried to impress me with his fighting because you goaded him into it. Yeah, laughed Ace, how about when you visited the village? Oh yeah, said a smiling Serenity. Demo, that reminds me to send out an invite to Makino and the Dayton family. You mean you haven't already? Questioned a surprised Ace. I didn't get to because of Luffy, grumbled Serenity. He keeps on adding people to the list of wedding guests. Lou does know that you two are getting married in 2 weeks, right? Asked Ace with a raised eyebrow. Don't remind me, sighed Serenity. Growing up, Luffy and Serenity would always meet either at Fuchsia Village or whenever her kingdom would land near Luffy's hometown. It didn't take a genius to tell that Luffy really did have feelings for Serenity, especially when he would always try to impress her with his powers whenever she arrived at his hometown. It just solidified his feelings when Sabo's ship was shot and sunk a few months later. Luffy was very distraught, but Serenity was there to comfort him and hug him, telling him that time, even if it will take a long time, will heal his wounds. That was when little Luffy actually gave little Serenity a peck on her lips, Hotaru and Ace witnessing the bold move from Luffy. Just thinking about that moment brought a smile on Serenity's lips as she tuned back to what Ace was asking. So, is the list finalized now? Questioned Ace. Nodded Serenity. Pluto is going to use her powers of time so that everyone actually got the invite before the 2 weeks. Smart, said Ace. Well, someone has to be, said Serenity in exasperation. I don't know what possessed me to still marry Luffy after Cassant mother explained what I decided as a 6-year-old. You said that, as a quote, he was cute, said a familiar female voice with hints of amusement in her tone. You also told me that he was still the lovable Baka from long ago, but he grew up handsome. Taru, exclaimed Serenity with her face aflame. Ha ha ha, laughed Ace, that's what you thought of my Baka of a brother. That's what Rina thought of Luffy, said an amused Hotaru. I was also there when Serenity initiated their official first kiss. Oh, do tell, said a smirking Ace. Serenity felt her face becoming more aflame as she heard Hotaru telling Ace what happened when Luffy finally set sail at age 17. It wasn't her fault that she and, to an extent, Hotaru were at Fuchsia Village to see Luffy sail out to become, in his words, the king of the pirates. He had his silly grin on when he saw Serenity walking towards him, along with his standard outfit of a red vest, blue shorts, and his signature straw hat. Although growing up with him as a playmate and finally girlfriend at the age of 13, Serenity couldn't help but think that he looked quite handsome, especially that silly grin on his face. She was taken aback when Luffy promised that even if he isn't close to being what he wanted just yet, he would sail back to marry her. With that, Serenity's heart pounded and she just impulsively wrapped her arms around Luffy and kissed him. Serenity's face was still aflame just thinking about that moment as she tuned in on what Hotaru said to Ace. Then, after the kiss, said a giggling Hotaru, Serenity tried to brush it off as a kiss for good luck instead. Sarah, laughed Ace, this is pure gold. I'm going to be teasing you and Lou with this for a long time. You do that, said Serenity, and I will tell him how you and Hotaru are actually together. We are not, exclaimed the duo. Demo, Luffy doesn't know that, said a smirking Serenity. And if I know that Baka, sighed Ace, he'll believe you over us any day. Glad that you agree, said Serenity. Now, since you don't really need me here, I am going to find Pluto to send out the invites. Don't forget that the invites should also go to that pirate alliance Lou made, pointed out Ace before muttering, Kamik God only knows how Lou got a pirate alliance and became the 5th pirate emperor. Don't forget that his bounty went up to 1,500,000,000 bellies, said an amused Hotaru. Ah, groaned Ace before whining, he's going to hound me about that bounty too. Don't worry, said Serenity as she looked over her shoulders, Luffy will be surprised by my wedding gift to him to actually do anything pondering look well, except cry of course. Great, groaned Ace once more, I'm a wedding gift to my Ototo little brother. Though, none, with the exception of Pluto, will be ready for a surprise of their own by a familiar person known as Sabo. Chapter 4, Luffy, Wedding Invitation Reactions. Nani, shouted the entire crew, Sabo laughing, fiancé. Nodded Luffy with a carefree grin and sitting nonchalantly on a barrel, my fiancé. All around Sabo and Luffy was Luffy's nakama, his pirate crew, who wore shocked expressions on their faces. All of the eyes of Luffy's crew were widened in shock and surprise, but that was to be expected. Luffy kept a big secret from his crew all these years ago. Not once did Luffy talk about even having a fiancé. Luffy was also the kind of person who they thought was oblivious to any sort of love. But, here and now, the crew was given the shock of their lives that, indeed, Luffy was engaged and was telling Frankie to sail to wherever the Vivre card pointed. Sabo smirked in amusement as the crew quickly ran as one towards Luffy and him. Is it true, questioned Nami, why you have AF fiancé? Nodded Luffy. USO lie, exclaimed Usopp and Chopper together. Not a lie, said Sabo with mirth in his tone, Luffy has been engaged since he was 7 years old. Shouted the entire crew, 7 years old. Shishishi, laughed Luffy. Just hearing about Luffy being engaged was a shock, but he was engaged at 7. Nami looked faint while Zoro kept on blinking his eyes to see if this was dream. Usopp and Chopper were sitting on the floor when they heard that shocking revelation. Brook had his skeletal hands on his face in shock with Frankie looking like he was about to shut down. Robin still had wide eyes but she plopped down on a chair near her. Sanji backed up from that news while shaking his head in disbelief. Sabo just shook his head as he realized that Luffy never said anything to his crew. Maybe because his sister-in-law was a princess and Luffy wanted to protect her until he was strong himself to do the protecting himself. Who would know, as the crew just kept on staring at Luffy with Luffy grinning freely. No one, however, saw a familiar, but billowing, black cloak fall to the ground with said person fainting on the deck of Luffy's ship until a thump signaled someone was also with them. "Ah, Trafalgar," exclaimed Chopper as he ran towards the fainted person. "It seems that you have a stowaway, Odoto," said Sabo. "Shishishi," laughed Luffy, "he's a friend, so it's fine." "Demo, shusho Captain," said Robin, "why didn't you tell us you were engaged? Didn't you trust us?" "So, yeah," said Nami as she snapped out of her fainting spell, "we're a crew." Nodded the other crew members. Luffy pouted at his crew. It wasn't like he didn't trust his crew. There were instances that the crew didn't tell him their past until their past came rearing its ugly head towards the crew, well, until Luffy had beaten said uglies up after learning their past. For him, the news of his engagement just never came up. No one even asked his life story either. So, just like when they learned their captain had 2 brothers after meeting them, they are now just hearing about his fiancée. It was also another thing that his fiancée is an honest-to-Kami princess. He wanted his crew to be strong before dropping that he was engaged. He would always protect his precious treasure, his precious little Usagi. He just hopes that he's now strong enough to protect her himself. Sabo, bless his heart, knew what Luffy didn't want to say and took charge like an older brother could. "It's not like Luffy wanted to keep this secret," said Sabo, "but I think Luffy wanted to be reassured that all of you were strong enough." "Strong enough?" questioned Sanji. Nodded Sabo before turning to Luffy, "Would be alright for me to reveal that." "Do you really have to?" whined Luffy. "Lu," said Sabo, "you are strong enough to protect her. Believe in yourself like she does." "You really think so?" questioned Luffy, who stopped whining but had a bit of doubt in his tone. "I know so," said Sabo, "besides, if you aren't strong, then you do not deserve to have your bounty at 1,500,000,000 bellies." "Chato Mat, wait a minute," exclaimed Nami, effectively breaking up the brotherly moment, "what are you two talking about?" "Luffy," questioned Zoro. Luffy, on his part, just jumped to his favorite seat on his ship. His back was turned, but he was aware of his crew looking at him weirdly. It was kind of out of character of him to do this to his crew, but he didn't want to really explain much. He still wanted to keep his fiancée's status for himself until the wedding, but that couldn't be helped now since everyone really wanted to know about her. Just thinking about her though made Luffy have a gentle smile on his face. He does wonder what his Usagi was doing right now and if he should be prepared to be harmed by Hotaru for giving her stress by planning the wedding mostly by herself. Sabo, on his part, just sighed. He knew that the stress of keeping his future sister-in-law's status a secret was what Luffy was doing, but if the crew needs to be prepared to talk to the Queen of all people, they needed this information. He was just glad that Pluto magically gave him the invites for Luffy's crew, or else they wouldn't be able to even set foot onto the island. "Here," said Sabo as he took out 8 identical envelopes. "Envelopes?" questioned Robin. "Envelopes," echoed Luffy as he suddenly jumped down from his spot and grabbed Sabo's hand that held the envelopes. Wow. I almost thought these weren't going to go out to anyone." "Baka," sighed Sabo before saying, "Pluto gave them to me a month ago. She also said to tell you that Hotaru is out for your blood." "Shishishi," laughed Luffy, "that's Hotaru all right." "Anyo," said Brook, "who is Hotaru? Is this the name of Luffy's fiancée?" "No way," said Luffy with his arms in an X, "she's not pretty enough." "Luffy," said Sabo with a tick over his eye, "remember what Ace and I did to you when you said that the first time and made certain someone's cry?" Hey, laughed a nervous Luffy, "Demo, it's true. My fiancée is way prettier than Hotaru." "That's because you only had eyes for her, Baka," said Sabo fondly, "and ever since you were 7. "Shishishi," laughed Luffy, "I am just happy she agreed and her mom did the rest." "Yeah," sighed Sabo, "just be glad she didn't fault you for being impulsive as always." Luffy just laughed off what Sabo said. Luffy could admit, to himself, that he was impulsive, but at least he snagged a princess for a fiancé, and just at 7 too. While Luffy laughed carefreely once more, Sabo got his hand back and handed each one of Luffy's crew members an envelope. Each one looked at the envelope to see that it was almost the same color as Luffy's shorts. Their names, which were the color of Luffy's beloved hat and in cursive, were also on their respective envelope when they thought there was nothing at the front of the envelopes. Each of the members simultaneously broke the seal and took out a familiar red color card with silver writing on it. "I guess she missed me a lot to make our invites the same colors as what I'm wearing," said Luffy nonchalantly. "Well, she's the one doing all the work," pointed out Sabo. "Don't need to point that out, Sabo," pouted Luffy, "I feel guilty already for not being there to help." "Just saying," said Sabo with a shrug, "that's another thing Hotaru wants to hurt you for. I also heard that she took her mantle as." "No more," shivered Luffy, who stopped Sabo from saying Hotaru's status. "He's scared of this Hotaru girl," thought the crew members in surprise. Said Sabo as he turned back to Luffy's crew, "aren't you going to read what the invite says? It will answer practically most of your questions." "All right," said everyone as they read the invite one by one. "You are cordially," started Zoro. "Invited to," said Nami. "A wedding on," Sanji with an eyebrow raised. "Silver Moon Kingdom Island," said Robin questioningly. "That will tie," said Usopp. "1. Monkey D. Luffy," said Frankie. "And 1. Princess Serenity Sakino V," exclaimed Brook in shock. "Together in holy matrimony," finished Chopper. The rest of the card told them to just come or not at all to the wedding. There was also no need to reserve their spot because if they had the invite in hand with their name on the envelope and showed it to where the island would be, then they were automatically in. Apparently, the people of this Silver Moon Kingdom Island don't fear pirates at all, and who could blame any of them? The one being wedded was the strongest pirate in existence. Sabo, however, also knew there was a failsafe on the cards because he believed that the Sailor Guardians would have placed one up to protect their precious princess. It, however, didn't help what actually stood out from the invite, for the name of Luffy's fiancée had the word princess before her name. "Nani!" exclaimed the crew in shock once more. "Luffy!" exclaimed Nami in shock, "are you really being married to a princess?" finished Robin with wide eyes once more. "Shishishi," laughed Luffy, "yup. Looks at his crew, I told you she was the prettiest." Luffy laughed more while Sabo looked at his little brother's crew in amusement. There, he could see that everyone was shocked once more on just who his little brother was marrying. He could also see a revived Trafalgar Law faint once more when he heard that, yes, Luffy was getting married, and apparently, to a princess of an island none of them ever heard of. A month ago. All across the oceans, various people were shocked when they saw envelopes they have never seen before magically appear before them. They got even more shocked by the contents of said envelope. "Luffy is getting married to a princess," shouted a shocked man with distinctly red hair and a triple set of vertically parallel, linear scars that pass at an angle over his left eye, red-haired Shanks. "Boss, we going?" questioned a man with gray, medium length, and slicked back hair and a large, X-shaped scar on his left temple, Ben Beckman. "Of course, Ben," said a still shocked Shanks, "after all, we have to question just how Luffy snagged a princess to marry. And look, this magical card showed us coordinates." Aye, Captain," said Ben before looking at the crew, "you heard the captain. Let's pack up and head to this Silver Moon Kingdom Island." Loud cheers were heard all throughout the place. Shanks and his crew were resting, some booze bottles miraculously not opened. As each of the members started to pack up to head to Luffy's wedding, another nation had envelopes magically appear and left shocked expressions on their faces. One was a familiar young woman with long wavy light blue hair and brown eyes, Nefertari Vivi, while around her were her father Nefertari Cobra, her trusted guardian Agaram, and her best friend Koza. All four were relaxing until the envelopes magically appeared and spilled its contexts to them. "No wonder Luffy didn't react to me being a princess," grumbled Vivi. "So, we going, Vivi Heim?" questioned Koza. Nodded Vivi, "that is if Tosen's alright with it." "Of course," said King Cobra, "though, it seems that they invited all of us because in mine, there is another message of making an alliance with Alabasta." "Nani?" exclaimed the three. As King Cobra showed them the context, there were similar magical message of forming an alliance with those that had royal blood in them. Those were also the royalties that Luffy encountered and sent a dismissive message back to his fiancée to invite them to the wedding. That, however, gave more work for his poor fiancée when she thought she was done. Another particular reaction was a person storming into a marine base unnoticed and growling at someone high up with two subordinates sweating in the background. What is the meaning of this, Tosin Dat? Growled a tall middle-aged man with spiky black hair with a widow's peak and a tattoo on the left side of his face, Monkey D. Dragon, as he slammed a familiar blue wedding invite envelope on Garp's table. Wahahaha, laughed the familiar sound of Garp's laughter. So, it would be Luffy's wedding invite that makes you come to me, Masuko-san. Ah, groaned Dragon, is this true? Hi, said Garp, it was written up because Luffy, at 7 years old, proclaimed that the princess would be his. The princess, bless her sweetheart, agreed to marry your Masuko by the time she turns 21, which is in a month's time. As Dragon groaned at what his son did, the two subordinates, one with pink hair, Kobe, and another with light blonde hair, Helmeppo, also showed Garp similar invites that magically appeared before them before they headed to meet Garp in his office. Garp just laughed as Kobe and Helmeppo showed the two men their invites as well. As they were discussing on sailing together, which is a first, Luffy's hometown, Fuchsia Village, didn't react shocking at all. They were already in the known and had their shocking reaction when little Serenity visited little Luffy for the first time. Just seeing Pluto showing up with their invites didn't deter them, except for one question. How are we getting there? Questioned young woman with brown eyes and dark green hair, Makino. Pluto, questioned the mayor of Fuchsia Village. I shall take you and the Dayton family in one of my portals to get to the wedding, explained Pluto. Excellent, said Makino, I can't wait to see how grown-up Serenity Heim became. Present time, Luffy's ship. At the present time, shocked reactions, especially within the Ninja Pirate Mink Samurai Alliance, were the same as certain people a month ago. The Alliance also had received their invites the same time as Luffy's crew, for all of them were at the so-called Pirates Festival. The Alliance also fainted due to the new knowledge of Luffy, of all people, snagging a princess and finally marrying her. However, this was ignored by Sabo and Luffy, who were laughing at the crew's reaction, Sabo tossing Trafalgar's invite to his fainting body. Ma, said Luffy, I wonder if these are the same reactions with the others. Don't know, said Sabo with humor in his eyes, Demo, there's never a dull moment with you, Nate, right, Ototo. Shishishi, laughed Luffy. Chapter 5, Usagi G, Wedding Invitation Reactions. Pluto, called out a smiling Serenity. After leaving Ace and Hotaru to their spar, Serenity walked towards her personal study where all of the wedding invites were. She was just finally happy that Luffy stopped sending her small scraps of paper through Pluto on who he wanted to invite to the wedding. She was about to go wherever Luffy went just to strangle him for giving him all this stress. At least, Pluto reminded her that with Luffy's adventure, he's learning how to lead an army, somewhat. Serenity, once arriving to her study, went in and sat down on her chair to get ready to embed a special magic that once touched, it would show the recipient's name on the envelope when said recipient touched it. If a recipient already touched an envelope but had others, it would leave the other envelopes empty until a recipient that hasn't touched an envelope will. Embedding the magic didn't take long as Serenity sagged onto her chair with a smile. Once Serenity called on Pluto, a dark portal appeared, leading to a knee-length dark green-haired woman wearing a sailor outfit that consists of maroon and black coming out. Konnichiwa, hello, Heim, said Pluto. Mo, pouted Serenity, how many times have I told you to not call me Heim? Too many to count, Heim, said a smiling Pluto. You are never going to stop, are you? Questioned a bemused Serenity. Of course not, said Pluto, anyways, why have you called me? Due to Luffy, we couldn't send out the wedding invites, said Serenity, so, I was wondering if you could. If I could traverse time to make sure the wedding invites get sent out at the appropriate time, finished Pluto with a smile. If it's not too much trouble, said Serenity. Of course not, Heim, said Pluto. Serenity smiled happily at Pluto. At least, she knows that the wedding invites will go to the recipients at the appropriate time instead of it being late. She looked at her desk and sighed. She didn't know how Pluto was going to deliver all of the envelopes that were stacked high on her desk. Pluto, however, wasn't worried about the stacks of envelopes. Serenity turned just as she heard Pluto chanting something before turning back to the stacks of envelopes in surprise. The envelopes were glowing maroon before, one by one, the envelopes flew into the air and into a very small dark portal that Pluto was known for. Some envelopes flew within the same portal, but Serenity just guessed that it was because the recipients were in the same crew. She, however, didn't know that some of those envelopes were delivered on the same day, just like with Luffy's crew. There, said Pluto with a satisfied smile, I shall deliver these envelopes personally, though. Arigato, thank you, Pluto, said Serenity, could you also pass a message? Oh, questioned Pluto. Nodded Serenity, tell Luffy that he better watch out for Hotaru. She knows how much stress I had due to him adding wedding guests. Will do, Heim, giggled Pluto. Pluto took the rest of the envelopes and disappeared in her very own portal to deliver them. Serenity sighed in relief as the wedding invites finally were delivered. However, she feared that the stuck-up celestial dragons will get wind of this and demand to be let into her special day. Serenity pouted because she didn't really like those types of people, but she had faith that their magic and the sailor guardians who will be on standby will protect all of them. After all, most of the wedding guests are infamous pirates. A knock on the door made Serenity blink back into reality, though. "Come in," called out Serenity. "Hey, sister-in-law," said Ace with a smile. "Hotaru wiped the floor with you?" asked Serenity with a smirk. "And no," denied Ace as he pouted. "She totally did," said Serenity. "Shut up," said Ace, "I beat her more times than she did to me." "Of course you did, brother-in-law," said Serenity. Serenity giggled as she saw a small red hue adorning Ace's cheeks. It was fun to make fun of Ace though because of how expressive he becomes. Ace just pouts at Serenity before plopping down onto the sofa that was in her office. Getting off of her chair, Serenity plops right next to Ace and smiles at him. She doesn't know that the pout on his face this time was caused by something else. Ace, on the other hand, still pouts and opens his mouth. "Why don't you call me Onisan, big brother?" questioned Ace. "Is that why you are pouting?" giggled Serenity. "I don't pout," said Ace with his head turned. "You do too," giggled Serenity before having a thoughtful look. "I don't call you that because it feels a bit weird. Besides, you don't call me Imoto, little sister." That's because you might have been uncomfortable if I did," spluttered Ace. Serenity smiled softly as she looked at Ace. If they were little kids, she knew that she also wouldn't have minded if Ace called her Imoto. Serenity smiled widely as she knew that Ace was just a softie at heart. Ace, though, looked a bit disturbed that Serenity was smiling at him widely. It reminded him of all the times as they were little and Serenity was being mischievous. Out of nowhere, Ace was thrown on his back, his arms full of Serenity. Ace blinked when he stared at happy crystal blue eyes looking at him. "Sarah?" questioned Ace. "Nissan is a baka," said Serenity with a giggle. "Of course, I wouldn't mind you calling me your Imoto. Though, it's the same thing for me. I thought you would be uncomfortable with me calling you that. I really wanted to call you that for the longest time. Guess we are both baka," said Ace who tightened his hold around Serenity. Giggled Serenity, "though, if Sabo were alive, do you think that he would mind me calling him Nissan too?" "Nah," said Ace with a faraway look, "Sabo would have been delighted for you to call him that too." Ace and Serenity stayed that way in silence. Both were thinking about Sabo for a while before a chuckle interrupted their silent moment. Both heads turned around to see Pluto having an amused glint in her eye. Ace and Serenity looked at each other before entangling. Serenity pouted because she really wanted to cuddle more with her now proclaimed older brother, but if Pluto was here, then something was up. Ace also was reluctant to let go of his now proclaimed little sister instead of calling her sister-in-law as he looked at Pluto. Pluto bowed before looking up to the two, a knowing look in her eyes. "Pluto?" questioned Ace. "Gomen, sorry to interrupt your cuddle time, Haim," said Pluto, but I came to tell you that all of the invites were delivered, especially to." "Ah," interrupted Serenity, "arigato for that." "Huh?" questioned a confused Ace, "especially to who?" "Oh," said Serenity nonchalantly, "to the Whitebeard pirates." "Oh," said Ace before the information caught up, "Nani? 1 month ago, Whitebeard pirates." "Marco," called out a male voice. A tall, lean, muscular, blonde-haired man looked up from his paperwork when he heard his name called. Leaning against his chair with a bored expression, he didn't have to wait long as his door slammed open. The door opened to the appearance of tall man that had a light brown pompadour hairstyle. This man, who was supposed to be deceased, was Thatch, the 4th S Division's commander that barged into Marco's room. Marco, on the other hand, felt a pang of guilt whenever he sees his fellow commander. He, however, saw an envelope in Thatch's hand and blinked. He could have sworn that that envelope was on his desk. "Marco," exclaimed Thatch, "I was just minding my own business to make food for everyone and then poof. This envelope suddenly appeared. I appeared to have the same envelope too, yoi," said Marco who saw the familiar envelope on top of his neat done paperwork. "What do you think it is?" questioned Thatch. "Get the other commanders here, yoi," said Marco, "we'll discuss it together." Thatch nodded his head before running off to gather the other commanders. Even though he now commanded the Whitebeard pirates, Marco was still cautious. He, after all, didn't want anything to happen to his other nakama, his brothers and sisters. Getting up from his chair, Marco walked out of the room towards another where he saw Thatch and the others waiting. He looked around to see a big, very muscular, broad-chested, heavily armored and dark-skinned man. Jozu, a tall, muscular, broad-chested, tanned man with a curly, black mustache. Vista, a short, rotund man with a rather grayish skin tone. Blamenko, a tall man with dark blonde dreadlocks. Rikuyo, an oceanic white-tipped shark-fish man. Namur, a cross-dressing man who wears a pink and purple kimono. Izo, a large and muscular older-looking man with a bald patch on the top of his head. Fosa, a tall, muscular, and sturdy man with purple-tinted, square-rimmed glasses. Curiel, a large tanned man with short blonde hair. Kingdu, a short man with a crop of short brown hair and blue eyes. Haruta, a huge man dressed in sleeveless gray and golden armor. Atmos, a somewhat round man wearing a brown fez with a whitebeard's insignia. Speed Jiru, and a huge, muscular man with dark hair pulled back in a braided ponytail. Blenheim. Glad you could come, Yoi, said Marco. What's this all about? Questioned Haruta. Did anyone, besides Thatch, receive this? Questioned Marco, who held up a familiar envelope. Questioned the commanders as they too held up their own envelopes. So, it wasn't just Thatch and me, Yoi, said Marco with a thoughtful look. The other members of our crew also gained an envelope too, said Curiel. They all said it appeared in front of them. You think it's a trap? Questioned Atmos. How can it be a trap when the envelopes appeared out of nowhere? Exclaimed Izo. Besides, all of us is sailing in the middle of the ocean. Why don't we just open it and read what the context says? Questioned Jozu. Marco nodded as he opened his own envelope. It would seem that whatever it says is going to be the same as the others. Taking out a familiar red color card, Marco had an eyebrow raised before laughing at what it read. The other commanders looked at Marco in worry when he burst out laughing all of a sudden. Marco shook his head before looking up to the other commanders. He then looked down at the red card and read it out loud to the others. You are cordially invited to a wedding on Silver Moon Kingdom Island that will tie 1, Monkey D. Luffy, and 1, Princess Serenity Sakino V, together in holy matrimony. It's a wedding invitation? Questioned a surprised Vista. Appears so, Yoi, said an amused Marco, nothing life-threatening at all. Did it say princess? Yelped out Fosa. Does that mean we're going to a royal wedding? Considering that the one being married is Ace's little brother, pointed out Kingdu. That lucky guy, said Thatch, marrying a princess. Anyways, said Curiel, what wedding gift are we giving to the married couple? 'Cause I heard that it's rude to not present a gift to them. We'll think of something, Yoi, said Marco. Either way, tell everyone to set sail to the coordinates that are on the invite. We have a wedding to attend, Yoi. Aye, chorused the commanders. Present time. I think you broke your older brother, Haim, said an amused Pluto. Serenity nodded her head as she looked at Ace. Ace's face paled when he heard that his old crew was coming to the wedding. It wasn't her fault that she invited the Whitebeard pirates. According to Luffy, he got along with everyone when he last met up with the pirates. He also told Serenity at the last moment to add all of the Whitebeard pirates to the wedding guest list. That was a headache in of itself because Serenity had to ask Pluto for names. Luffy always was bad at other people's names and gave them their own nicknames. Serenity sighed just thinking about Luffy's weird nicknames for Ace's crew, but she waited patiently for Ace to snap out of whatever he was thinking about. It didn't take long as Ace turned to stare at Serenity. Do you have any idea what you just did, Imoto? Questioned Ace. Invited your old crew to the wedding because Luffy wanted them there, answered Serenity. I'm going to wring Lu's neck when I see him, muttered Ace darkly. Will you be alright once they reach the island, Nissan? Questioned Serenity. I don't want you to be uncomfortable. I'll be fine, said Ace. I just have to mentally prepare myself is all. Do you regret living when your captain sacrificed his life that day? Questioned Serenity imploringly. Said Ace. I know that he did that to save everyone. There's going to be a lot of crying when they see me. And seeing that you don't have Whitebeard's mark anymore, trailed off Serenity. Ace nodded his head. His Whitebeard mark wasn't on his back anymore. That burned off when that admiral stuck a magma fist through him. Yes, he did die, but with the powers of Saturn and with Mercury's doctor skills, they were able to revive him. He now had the mark of Mars on his back. Though, the symbol of Mars was surrounded by flames that created a dragon head and wings, taking place where the Whitebeard mark used to be. He also didn't regret agreeing to it because he could go on land with Serenity and protect her from perverts. Why are you scowling? Questioned Serenity. Just remembering all those perverts that tried to get fresh with you, scowled Ace. Demo, Haim has you to protect her while the other guardians protect the island, pointed out Pluto. I know, said Ace as he pulled Serenity to his side. No one is going to get to Sarah while I'm there with her. Anyways, said Pluto, since I am done with what I was asked to do, I shall take my leave. The time gates still have to be protected. However, I shall see you soon, Ace. See you later, Pluto, said the two as they watched Pluto disappear into a dark portal. We'll never get used to her disappearing like that, said Ace. At least, she doesn't appear suddenly behind you like she does to me, pouted Serenity. That's true, chuckled Ace. A week later, pirates spotted ahead, called out a female voice. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is The Princess and the Pirate by Saranghae Tenshi. Chapter 6, Meeting with Other Wedding Guests at Sea. Are we there yet? Questioned Luffy for the nth time. For the last time, said an irritated Nami. No. It has been 1 week that the Straw Hat Pirates set sail from their faraway distance from the last island, Delta Island. Around them, their allies were sailing with them to get to their de facto leader's wedding. No one also saw the Revolutionary Army's ship following from behind one of the pirates' ships. Nami, who was the best navigator there was telling Frankie on how to sail while looking at the moving Vivre card in her hand. They, of course, would stop in a habited island to restock their food supplies because they were feeding the black hole of a stomach by the name of Monkey D. Luffy. They also had to add in the fact that Sabo, Luffy's older brother, could also eat a lot, but not as much as Luffy, thankfully. However, it has been 1 week, and Luffy was, for the nth time, asking if they were at the Silver Moon Kingdom Island yet. Nami knew that Luffy was just anxious to meet up with his fiancée, though that word was still foreign to all of the crew members, but why did he have to ask over and over again? Luffy, called out Sabo, stop bothering Nami. If you want to get to your precious fiancée in time, you best leave her and Frankie to sail the ship. Demo, Sabo, whined Luffy, I want to be there for her birthday. Well, bothering the two people that can get you there is going to make you move slower, pointed out Sabo. Fine, sighed Luffy before jumping over the rail of where he was and landing on the green grass. Anyways, said Sabo, who nodded at Nami when her eyes portrayed her thanks, the others want to know what your fiancé looks like. Demo, said Luffy, you already know what she looks like. Doesn't mean that your crew knows how she looks like, said Sabo. Luffy nodded his head as he sat crisscrossed on the green grass of the deck. He looked to see that Chopper and Usopp were already seated on the deck with Robin sitting on the lounge chair. Zoro opened one eye to look what was going on before closing said eye, letting his ears listen to what his captain has to say about this so-called fiancé of his. Across from Zoro, Trafalgar was also present, standing in arms folded. He couldn't comprehend that the Monkey D. Luffy has a fiancé and at such a young age as well. They also had to stop to pick up his dear friend and crew member, Beppo, who was also magically invited to the wedding. However, that was the only crew member that was invited. The others weren't, and Trafalgar wondered why. He looked on as Luffy started to grin widely, a thoughtful look in his eyes. So, what does this fiancé look like? Questioned Usopp. She has golden blonde hair, said Luffy while his face scrunched up, and, I think that her hair grew longer. You think? Questioned Sabo amusedly. Well, we don't really send each other pictures because why would we when we could just talk a lot on the Den Den Mushi transponder snail, pouted Luffy, that's just stupid. Wait a minute, said Nami, you have a Den Den Mushi. Well, yeah, said Luffy with a confused look, it's easier than writing a letter. And, you didn't tell us this so that we didn't have to spend money on another one, gritted Nami, who was about to blow from spending money on a Den Den Mushi a while ago. Nami, said Sabo, who saved his little brother from her wrath, that Den Den Mushi is a special one because it will only connect between Luffy and Serenity. It will never connect to other Den Den Mushis like what you have seen before. How could that be? Questioned Chopper. Because, this Den Den Mushi is created by the Queen and her loyal guardian's magic, explained Sabo. Magic, exclaimed everyone on board, who looked incredulous at the two brothers. Magic, said Sabo as Luffy laughed at their faces. Before either crew member could comment on the absurdity of what Sabo was saying, Brook, who was on lookout but still listening, called out that there was a ship approaching them. Everyone sprang into action to see which ship because basically their allies were behind them, including the Revolutionary Army's ship. They weren't really expecting a ship to approach theirs while they were sailing to Silver Moon Kingdom Island. Usopp was the one who spotted the flag of the other ship, which was a white Jolly Roger with a large mustache and a cross behind it. Usopp could also see 15 people at the side of said ship. It's the Whitebeards, called out Usopp. You invited them as well? Questioned a surprised Zoro. Yeah, exclaimed Luffy, have to have all of my friends there. Don't you mean allies? Questioned Frankie. If Ace calls them family, of course I'm going to invite them, prompted Luffy with a sharp nod. Does this mean we have more family? Teased Sabo. I guess so, laughed Luffy. Guys, called out Zoro, there are 2 other ships on this side. Nani, yelled out the crew before going to the other side. On the opposite side of the Whitebeards, there was a floating marine ship and another pirate ship. The pirate ship was a bit smaller compared to the marine ship. It wasn't long until Robin spotted the flag of said pirate ship, which was a realistic-looking, 2 red stripes across the left-eyed skull that had a pair of crossed red sabers behind it. They could spot an enthusiastic red-haired man being held back by a man with slicked-back gray hair. They could also see 2 distinguished men on the marine ship. One had spiky black hair and a tattoo on the left side of his face, while the other man had aging white hair and a scar over his left blue eye. "D Dragon-san?" questioned Sabo. "T that's Dragon," yelped out Nami. "Ah," said Sabo, "and he's next to the old geezer." "Why, yeah," shouted Luffy, "Tochin and GG, old man, are here too." "T this is bad, isn't it?" questioned Usopp, whose knees were shaking. "It could be bad," said Robin, "after all, we have 3 strong oppositions surrounding us. They could blow us up and let us sink into our watery doom." "D don't say things like that, Robin," yelped Chopper, Brook, and Usopp together. "Nah," said Luffy nonchalantly, "they are just here for my wedding." "Ah," said Brook, "that kind of calmed my heart down, but I don't even have a heart." "Yo ho 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 ho. Skull joke. But, wouldn't the world government know about this?" questioned Frankie. "After all, this is a super wedding, and probably a super meeting between a Yonko and a former Yonko crew." Luffy didn't respond because at that moment, the Whitebeard pirates got to their ship and asked to come aboard. Luffy gave his permission enthusiastically, letting 3 of the members come on board. The other 12 stayed on their vessel but still looked at Luffy's crew members, gouging their strength with their own eyes. They wouldn't want Luffy to have a bad crew since he is still the late Ace's little brother, making him family. They didn't really know who the blonde one with the top hat was as the 3 boarded onto Luffy's ship, the Thousand Sunny. "Straw Hat, yoy," said the blonde-haired, Marco. "Pineapple Head," exclaimed Luffy with a huge grin, "glad you could make it." "It's Marco, yoy," said Marco as his left eye twitched. "Ha ha ha," laughed the light brown pompadour-haired man, "Thatch, Pineapple Head. I have got to use that." "You do, and I'll throw you overboard, brother or not, yoy," said Marco with another tick over his eye. "Who are you, Breadhead Ossen, uncle?" questioned Luffy. "Be Breadhead Ossen," exclaimed Thatch with a frown. "Yeah," said Luffy, who was closed to be clobbered by a fist by Nami. "I'm Thatch," said Thatch, "nice to meet Ace's little brother." "Thatch?" questioned the blonde with a top hat, "aren't you supposed to be dead?" "Dead?" exclaimed Thatch again, "no way. A stab to the back wouldn't have killed me off easily." "So, Ace did run off before listening to anything people say," sighed the blonde with the top hat, "how typical of him." "How do you know Ace?" questioned the kimono dressing man, Izo. "Saw," said the blonde with the top hat in amusement, "I wonder." "He's Sabo," said Luffy. "Right," said Thatch, who looked at Sabo and nodded his head, "Sabo." Nodded Luffy before bluntly stating, "He's my older brother." "Right," said Thatch with a nod, "he's your older bro, Nani." "Older brother." Luffy started to laugh more at Thatch, who was just going with the flow until the revelation that Ace had another brother out at sea and didn't tell anyone about it. Sabo, on his part, just face-palmed before shaking his head at what a Luffy thing to do. He didn't know why Thatch was going along with whatever Luffy was saying, but well, the cat is out of the bag, so to speak. Marco and Izo looked at Sabo with perception and had curiosity on why neither of them heard about this Sabo from Ace. They could fondly and irritatingly remember all the times Ace would talk on and on about his cute and gullible little brother, but they never heard anything about this Sabo person. It wasn't long that more people were aboard the Thousand Sunny. Marco groaned when he spotted, in his point of view, the annoying red-haired man, Shanks. "Shanks," exclaimed Luffy. "Yo," said Shanks calmly, "nice to see you once again, Luffy." Nodded Luffy, "Are you here for your hat?" "Well," stalled Shanks, "you did become a great pirate like we promised each other all those years ago." "Quit playing head games with Luffy, Captain," said the other man, Ben. "You're no fun, Ben," pouted Shanks. "Biwahahaha," laughed Garp as he and the other man boarded, "why this is a lively bunch." "Anyways," said Marco, who rubbed his forehead, "Sabo is your older brother." "Sabo?" questioned Garp before he turned towards the mentioned man in a snap, "Why you're alive." Sabo just sighed as he too felt a headache coming. He wonders just how Serenity will be able to contain all of the chaos that Luffy would always be in. He, however, couldn't wait until Hotaru got a hold of Luffy. She was probably one girl who could incite fear into his baby brother, no matter if Luffy was in his 20s. He also was thankful that Serenity never grew up as gullible as Luffy, even though he had a feeling that if things were different, Serenity would have had a personality that was just similar to Luffy's. Though, Serenity was still an innocent and pure person. Sabo really believes he has to rethink on her marrying Luffy now. Shaking his head mentally, he quickly dodged a fist that was covered in hockey ambition coming his way. "What was that for, you old geezer?" yelled out Sabo. "How dare you dodge my fist of love?" yelled out Garp. "You could have given me amnesia," again, yelled back Sabo. "So, Sabo had amnesia?" questioned Izo. "Yes," said Robin, "apparently, he had amnesia until after the Marineford incident, if what he and Shusho-san has told us at Dressrosa and afterwards." "No wonder," said Marco before having sad eyes, "poor Ace. He probably died thinking that his other brother was dead." Before anyone else could comment on it, a shimmer appeared right in front of the gathered pirate ships, the Revolutionary Army ship, and the Marine ship. Everyone blinked when they saw the shimmer because it was silver in color before something amazing happened. Right as the shimmer started, everyone narrowed their eyes to figure out what this was. It was sudden, but everyone could finally make out the shimmer split and moved back to reveal an island, exclaimed a shocked Nami. "It seems as though we have reached the fabled Silver Moon Kingdom Island," said Robin bemusedly. "This is awe-inspiring," said Frankie, who lifted his shades out of his eyes. "Kakoi cool," exclaimed Luffy, Chopper, and Usopp. "So, this is really happening," said Shanks, "little Luffy is getting married." "Aye, Captain," said Ben with a small smile on his face. "I wonder if they need some of the Revolutionary Army here," muttered Dragon to himself. Indeed, every pirate that was following the Straw Hat Pirates or were on the other ships that just came had their eyes bug-eyed. The island itself was extraordinary. They could see a huge dock that was big enough for the ships to anchor at. They could also see that beyond the dock was a pathway that led deeper into the massive forest that had silver tip-like leaves hanging around. They could also spot one of the tallest tower tops from the palace that all of them would probably stay in. They were surprised, however, that when they quietly sailed into the shimmering light slid back to where it opened up and disappeared, leaving nothing shown from the outside. It wasn't until a female voice rang out for all to hear when they sailed closer. "Pirates spotted ahead," called out a female voice. Chapter 7. Going to the palace leads to surprises. "Pirates spotted ahead," called out a female voice. Every pirate looked around their surrounding area to try to find the voice. However, they could only hear the female voice. It wasn't long that each ship docked in an opening spot, a member of each ship dropping their own anchor. Luffy was the most excited because he was vibrating on the spot, Sabo's hand firmly on Luffy's left shoulder. He knew that Luffy was excited to finally be here on Silver Moon Kingdom Island and to see his fiancée, but he also knew that they didn't have permission to step foot onto the island until certain people greet them. He could practically feel Luffy was about to rocket onto the island and find his fiancée, which made Sabo promptly hold Luffy's left shoulder even tighter. "I know you want to see her soon," said Sabo for everyone, especially Luffy, to hear. "Demo, we have to wait for a guardian, remember?" "Guardian?" questioned Shanks. "Hi," said Sabo, "it is part of the magic that protects the island. If someone who doesn't have a guardian's permission lands onto the dock, well, you can imagine what will happen to that person." "Magic?" questioned Shanks in disbelief. "Magic," said a female voice from the docks. Everyone blinked at who answered before rushing towards where the docks were. There, standing at the docks, were actually 4 females. One female had scarlet red hair styled into a peculiar high ponytail and was wearing a sailor uniform that was mostly red with a black chest bow and a red star-shaped brooch affixed to it. Another female had pink hair that was styled in a high bun with a bright yellow ribbon and droopy ponytails hanging in a circular fashion by her ears and was wearing a sailor uniform that was mostly pink with a plum purple chest bow and a pink star-shaped brooch affixed to it. Another female had pale blue hair that was styled into a high bun, but with a strange headdress consisting of a metallic ring around her head with 4 small fluted metal pipes and was wearing a sailor uniform that was mostly pale blue with a deep blue chest bow and a pale blue star-shaped brooch affixed to it. The last female had green hair with 3 circular brown hair bands resting on top of her head, which contains her green locks into a very high ponytail, and 2 long brown hair bands that contained the rest of her hair into 2 low ponytails and was wearing a sailor uniform that was mostly green with a brown chest bow and a green star-shaped brooch affixed to it. All 4 were wearing knee-high boots and watching the ships closely for any danger with their eyes. "Ah, what lovely ladies," crowed out Sanji as his eyes turned into hearts and was wiggling around. "Sorry, Blondie," said the pink-haired female with a disgusted look on her face, "you're too old for us." "Yeah, Asen," giggled the light blue-haired female, "too old." "Oh Asen," whined Sanji with a dark cloud over his head from the insult. "Hentai pervert," muttered the green-haired female. "So, I don't recognize you 4, said Sabo, "are you the Guardians?" "We are," said the red-haired female, "call me Vesta." "Series," said the pink-haired female. Palace, said the light blue-haired female with a giggle, nice to meet, cha. Juno, said the green-haired female with a glare. We four make up the Sailor Quartet, said Vesta, Ceres is the leader of us. Why are you wearing that? Asked Nami, who was eyeing the outfits. It's our fighting uniform, explained Ceres. Don't ask why, because it's been that way for over a millennia. Millennia, chorused everyone who was listening to the Sailor Quartet. The Sailor Quartet didn't answer, but they did give the guests all mysterious smiles. They knew that they were reawakened earlier by Queen Serenity IV herself due to wanting more protectors for Princess Serenity V, but the guests didn't have to know about that. They were just glad that Pluto had the hindsight to see into the future to see that they were reawakened by a great evil and doing horrible things that went against their Sailor Senshi code of honor. Reawakened earlier to protect the reincarnated princess of the Silver Millennium was the best decision ever, especially when they grew up to be 3 years younger than Princess Serenity V herself instead of being 7 years younger. The four females looked to each other before motioning all of their guests to follow the four of them. When are we going to see Usagi? Questioned Luffy to Vesta. Usagi? Questioned Juno. Nodded Luffy, my fiancé. Oh, exclaimed Palace, you mean Serenity. That's what I said, said Luffy. Usagi. Demo, her name, started Vesta. Forget it, girls, sighed Sabo, Ototo will always call Sarah Usagi. Right, said Ceres with a sweat drop, anyways, you will get to see her soon. We just have to drop off most of the guests towards their lodging. Lodging? Questioned Haruta. Nodded Ceres, the palace doesn't have room for motions behind the group all of you. We are sorry for the inconvenience, said a sweat-dropping Sabo. No worries, said Juno, I heard that, Taru is going to dish out some punishment for the one who caused this. I didn't do it, said Luffy while whistling to the side. Of course you did, shouted back Sabo and the Sailor Quartet in exasperation. We heard from Serenity and Taru that it was you who kept on adding more and more guests to the wedding, said Vesta with a frown. Such a bad fiancé you are, Monkey-sama, chided Palace childishly. Luffy frowned in guilt as he heard what he did to his fiancé. It wasn't like he wanted to do that, but he was always the selfish one. He wanted all of his nakama to be at this important wedding, too. Looking at Sabo with a sad face, Luffy begged his older brother inwardly to help him come up with something to make Serenity feel less stress. Sabo, on his part, side-hugged Luffy while he thought of something that Luffy could do to make it up to Serenity. He knew that his little brother was the cause of said stress, but maybe some love and begging on his part will help. I don't know what to do to help, Lou, said Sabo. Demo, I think the best thing to do is to apologize to Sarah once you see her. And a lot of begging to Taru as well, pointed out Juno. You know she'll want to punish you very harshly for making her best friend stress out. You should also do something for Pluto as well, piped up Vesta. She was the one who used her magic to send the invites on time. I got it, pouted Luffy, I messed up. Don't need to point it out to me anymore. Gomen, Lou, said Sabo, anyways, your nakama should have some ideas to make it up to Sarah. Two glances over his shoulder. Nate, right. Of course, said Brook, I shall compose a song for the princess in hopes to helping Luffy-san out. Maybe create something for her, pondered Frankie. As the Strafuts and Sabo tried to come up with ideas, Thatch piping up from time to time, the Sailor Quartet looked at each other and shook their heads. It will be something once Luffy and those that could stay in the palace arrived. The four did wonder what Serenity and Hotaru had planned once they reached the gates to the palace though. As they thought about their friend's plan, the four would gesture to the other pirates towards their lodging. They told them all that if they wanted something to eat, there was a magical card that once written down what you wanted, the meal will magically appear on the kitchen table for them. The guests started to dwindle once the Sailor Quartet showed the guests to lovely homes they would be staying in for the duration until after the wedding ended. It wasn't long that only the Whitebeard commanders, Shanks, Garp, Dragon, the Strafuts, Sabo, and Luffy were the only ones following the Sailor Quartet towards the palace gates. So, we're the only ones that will be getting to live in the palace, questioned Fosa. That is correct, said Ceres. Why couldn't my crew come with, whined Shanks. Serenity wanted to meet Luffy's father figure and actual father, explained Ceres. Yeah, said Juno, just be glad that your crew is much nearer of the palace gates than the others. The princess wants to meet me, squeaked out Shanks. Hi, said Palace, Serenity wants to meet the one who saved Monkey-sama's life. Sama again, questioned Usopp, why are you calling him Sama? It's quite obvious that we call him Sama because he is going to be king of the Silver Moon Kingdom Island soon, said a sarcastic Juno, so why wouldn't we call our future king Sama? The others gaped at the simple explanation of Luffy being a future king. Sure, He was going on and on about becoming king of the pirates, but being an actual king to an island didn't really sunk into their heads yet. They also remembered that his fiancée was a princess, but they weren't really thinking about Luffy being king before becoming king of the pirates. What would also happen about their dreams? Would Luffy just stop his dream and leave the crew to rule over this island instead? As the Strafuts and Shanks pondered about the path Luffy would be taking, everyone was greeted by another female once they made it through the palace gates. This female had short dark purple hair, violet eyes, and pale skin while holding onto a sharp glaive in one hand. She was also glaring fiercely at Luffy and Sabo, both males taking a step back. "Taru," exclaimed Pallas, not in uniform. "Ie," said Hotaru, "Pluto told me about a hentai Asen that was in Luffy's crew and didn't want me to be exposed to such nonsense." "Well, that is one way to name the lover cook," said Zoro with a smirk. "You moss head," growled Sanji, "I am not like that. I respect the ladies, unlike you." "You wanna go, arrow cook," glared Zoro. "Knock it off," yelled out Nami as she punched Zoro and Sanji on the head. "Of course, Nami-kwan," sang Sanji. "Whatever, you witch," muttered Zoro. And speaking of Luffy, continued Hotaru, who was ignoring Nami, Zoro, and Sanji to continue to glare at Luffy, "care to tell me why you made Serena stressed out?" "I wanted all of my nakama to come to the wedding," said Luffy. "All the while adding to the list when you stumble upon a new nakama?" asked Hotaru with a sweet smile on her face. "Of course," said Luffy with a puffed chest out. "Lu," muttered Sabo, "you are agitating her." "And you," said Hotaru with a glare to Sabo, "why didn't you contact Serena when you know that Luffy has the Den Den Mushi number, Sabo?" I was busy," said a nervous Sabo. "Doing?" questioned Hotaru. "Confidential," said Sabo, "besides, it was Dragon Sand's fault." "Honto ni really?" asked a skeptical Hotaru. Sabo just nodded vigorously while Luffy started to understand that his older brother was also in trouble with Hotaru. Luffy started to laugh at Sabo's expense while Sabo gave Luffy a betrayed look. Both brothers didn't notice that everyone else that was with them was watching the show. This Hotaru person was quick to make Luffy, a pirate with a bounty over 1 billion berries, and Sabo, the chief of staff and second in command of the revolutionaries, cower by just a glare. They, however, didn't know that Hotaru was actually the second strongest among the sailor Senshi. It wasn't long that their jaws dropped when Hotaru started to attack and chase the brothers as punishment. "Silence glaive surprise," called out Hotaru. "Ah!" yelled out Sabo and Luffy before darting off around the courtyard and dodging Hotaru. "Get back here and take your punishment like men," shouted Hotaru. "No way," called out Sabo, "we know what that glaive could do to us." "Yeah," shouted Luffy, "I don't wanna be dead before being Pirate King." "Dead?" asked a surprised Speed Jiru. "And what is up with that attack?" questioned Namor. "We cannot tell you for safety reasons," said Ceres, "however, just wait until Hotaru is done. She will be the one to guide you all now." "And where are you going?" questioned King Du. "We have other duties besides being guides, you know," said Juno with a frown. With that, the sailor quartet jumped high into the air and landed on another rooftop before running off, leaving the group in the courtyard of the palace with the gates firmly shut behind said group. Each one had their jaws dropped as they saw the sailor quartet leaving in such a fashion, wondering how the 4 girls could jump that high and over rooftops to get to where they needed to go. They never once thought that those being guardians gave them special powers over certain areas. It wasn't long that a female voice and a very familiar male voice made it towards the courtyard. "I wonder who Taru's punishing this time?" questioned the very familiar male voice. "Probably Luffy," said the female. "You know, Taru really wanted to lay one on him for stressing me out." "That's true," said the male. "Anyways," said the female, "do you know who else is in the courtyard?" "I don't recognize them." Trying to pinpoint the voices, everyone, besides Hotaru, Sabo, and Luffy, turned to the left to see a very pretty female. This female was dressed similarly to Luffy's old outfit, but her top was more like a blouse and the jean shorts was actually a jean skirt. She also had very long golden blonde hair that was tied up in a simple braid and the clearest crystal blue eyes. Sanji was quick to twirl over to the female and grab one of her hands. He was about to put his lips onto the back of the female's hand until a fiery fist hit the side of his face, sending Sanji back towards the group. Everyone blinked before looking at Sanji and back to the fist that stopped smoking flames. It also made Sabo and Luffy to stop their cat and mouse chase with Hotaru, who was looking at the fist as well, Hotaru slinking back to the new female's side and a glare fixed on Sanji. Everyone followed the fist up to a muscular arm towards a face, a male face, a very familiar male face that sported childish freckles and curly black hair on top. All jaws dropped when they saw that familiar face staring at the group with a smirk. I am thankful that you have been taken care of, my baka of an ototo, said the male. Demo, keep your hands off of my Imoto or else you will get a taste of my fiery fist again, Sanji. Ace, cried out, questioned the entire group with eyes bulging out. Yo, said Ace outwardly casually, yet inwardly hiding his nervousness. Chapter 8, Interlude. Portgas d Ace lives. Ace could feel himself floating. As he tried to look around, all he could see was black. The only thing he remembered was feeling the hot magma that Admiral shot through his body as he faded within his little brother's arms. He also felt regret when he died in his little brother's arms, realizing that his dying moment would traumatize his beloved little brother, till the end of time. Sighing inwardly, he tried once more to look around, to try to find wherever in the afterlife he was in. It wasn't until a bright, soft lavender light shimmered right in front of his face. Ace still couldn't feel anything besides the floating feeling, but he was inwardly startled when a female voice started to talk to him through the lavender light. It is not your time, Heiken no Ace, Fire Fist Ace, said the female voice. Who are you, murmured Ace. It is not your time, Heiken no Ace, repeated the voice. Leave me alone if you aren't going to answer, murmured Ace, I'm already dead. Just send me to where Sabo is. It is not your time, Heiken no Ace, repeated the voice. Ace inwardly groaned because he knew that he was dead. However, this female voice kept on telling him it wasn't his time. What did that even mean? Exclamation mark. A magma fist through the body and burning his insides definitely qualified that he was dead. The female voice was also getting on his nerves when it kept repeating the same sentence over and over again. Ace tried to glare at the lavender light in front of him, but he still couldn't, only feel himself floating in darkness with the light as the only thing he could see. He, however, could only gape when moments passed and the light began to become brighter and brighter, leading to the lavender light engulfing Ace slowly. Does this mean that the light is going to take me to the afterlife, thought Ace before he was finally consumed by said light. In the real world, before Ace takes the final magma blow. Why do I feel nervous just now, questioned a confused Serenity. I don't know, said Hotaru, why do you? Serenity and Hotaru were walking towards the Sailor Senshi training room to train with the other Sailor Guardians. Apparently, Queen Serenity IV finally told the two 16-year-olds their destiny as a Sailor Guardian of a respective planet or moon like the other Sailor Guardians living within the Silver Moon Kingdom Island. The two looked bewildered at the news, but they decided that they would try to be Sailor Guardians. They both thought that it would be fun and would also have the power to travel with Luffy and his crew in later years. However, before the two could even reach the training room, Hotaru started to yell out and glow lavender. Serenity gaped in surprise while also screaming to Hotaru on what was wrong. That alerted the inners and outers that were already in the training room. What's going on? Yelled out Uranus. I don't know, whimpered Serenity as Venus pulled her away from Hotaru, as she just started to scream. It seems as though something has happened to awaken Saturn earlier than expected, said Pluto. Demo, questioned the sea green and navy blue wearing Senshi. Neptune, what could that be? Pluto couldn't answer because at that moment, Hotaru disappeared somewhere that the others couldn't follow. Serenity whimpered while the other Senshi looked at the now gone Hotaru in shock. They didn't know why that could have happened, but when lavender lights sparkled once more where Hotaru was, they couldn't only gasp in horror when the sparkles revealed Hotaru, and a bloody body. Serenity screamed while Venus tried to turn her head away from the gruesome bloody body. Uranus cursed under her breath while the red-wearing Senshi, Mars, covered her mouth. The green and pink-wearing Senshi, Jupiter, and the blue-wearing Senshi, Mercury, raced forward towards Hotaru to help relieve her of her burden. They all didn't know just how Hotaru had disappeared only to reappear with a bloody body, but once they turned the body to reveal the face, Ace-kun, gasped out Serenity in horror. Oh my, said Mercury as she examined Ace, something powerful burnt most of his insides. Turns to Jupiter, I need you to rush him to the medical bay, stat. On it, said Jupiter as she lifted the body with Uranus, both now rushing to the medical bay. Pluto, please help Hotaru, said Mercury, if we want to save him, we need Hotaru to snap out of whatever this is and find his soul. Pluto just nodded her head as she pulled Hotaru up from her sitting position. She and Hotaru waited for Mercury to give more orders, but the only order left was for Mars and Venus to comfort Serenity Heim while Neptune informs Queen Serenity IV. Nodding to their directions, Mercury, Pluto, and Hotaru left to the medical bay where Uranus and Jupiter were getting the hired nurses to help clean the body for Mercury. Mars and Venus looked grim as they tried to console the now crying Serenity Heim, who has seen someone dear to her in death's door. They didn't know if he would make it or not, but they prayed for a miracle. In the medical bay, hours later. Arigato gozaimasu, thank you so much, Serenity Jusama, Queen, said Mercury. Without the Ginzuisho, I feared that even with Saturn grabbing Portga's soul, he would have died again. It was long and hard, but a miracle upon miracles, Ace was living again. Once Neptune told the Queen what had transpired, Mercury got the shock of her life when the Queen ran into the medical bay, the Ginzuisho in hand. The Queen then asked Mercury on what she could do to help. That question prompted Mercury to tell the Queen to shine the Ginzuisho on Ace, making the Queen the life support for Ace, before Mercury turned to the other nurses and told them to carefully take the burnt innards out. There, Mercury started to diagnose on what to replace within Ace with the nurses they have hired. Pluto was to the side with Hotaru, coaching said girl on how to find Ace's soul in the world of the dead. Hotaru, on her part, was glowing her lavender color softly as her eyes were closed, listening to Pluto's coaching. It took hours for Mercury replaced what she could. It took hours for Hotaru to finally use her powers to engulf Ace's soul before gently placing said soul into his body with Pluto's help. Finally, it took hours for Queen Serenity IV to call forth the Ginzuisho's power to heal whatever was left. It was my pleasure, said Queen Serenity, Ace is too young to die like that. Shall I look through the time stream to figure out what had happened, questioned Pluto. Hi, dear friend, said Queen Serenity, we should prepare due to. Of course, Serenity Jusama, said Pluto. And Mercury, addressed Queen Serenity. Hi, Serenity Jusama, said Mercury. Please move Ace-kun to the bedroom next to my Masumi daughter S, said Queen Serenity. Mercury bit her lower lip but nodded nonetheless. Seeing the Queen and Pluto leave, Mercury used her communicator and quickly gotten Jupiter and Uranus to come to help move Ace. Hotaru was nodding off in one of the chairs, and Mercury decided that they will let her rest in the medical bay until Uranus could come and carry her into her own bedroom. It didn't take long for Jupiter and Uranus to come into the medical bay and start to carefully move Ace onto a hospital transfer roller board. Mercury also told two of the nurses to follow to place IV drips and monitor wires on Ace's body to make sure he was still alive. Rolling Ace out with backup equipment, the three Senshi and the nurses walked down the long hall towards Serenity Heim's wing. It was there that Mercury opened the bedroom right next to Serenity Heim's. Jupiter and Uranus gently transferred Ace onto the bed before moving away for the nurses and Mercury to place the wires and IV drips on his person. Why this room, Mercury, questioned Jupiter. Serenity Jusama commanded it, said Mercury. Do you know when he'll wake up, questioned Uranus. EA, said Mercury, the operation was a success, no doubt about that. However, Portgas will be out for a long while before he wakes up. The damage that we replaced and healed up was quite extensive. As I said to Serenity Jusama, without the Ginzuisho's help, Portgas would have died a second time. Let's make sure that Portgas doesn't die then, said Jupiter. I never want to see Serenity Heim so shocked and horrified again. Same here, said Uranus before stretching. Well, time to bring Hotaru into her own bedroom. And try to figure out with everyone on why she disappeared to only reappear with Portgas' body, said Mercury. 4 months later. Groaned Ace softly. Ace could remember the floating feeling in the lavender light. When that light engulfed him, he couldn't exactly feel anything. He could, however, hear murmured words before pain engulfed him instead. That pain made him pass out until he could feel, well, anything. He didn't know where he was, but once his mind finally woke up, he could feel more than the floating feeling. He could feel something soft underneath him. If he could feel something soft underneath, that meant that he could move, right? Trying to move was futile as he felt his arms feeling numb and heavy. He also squinted his eyes as his mind caught up to what he was trying to feel. However, when he opened his eyes slightly, all he could see was darkness with a hint of moonlight. Ace let out a soft groan, but that noise made something or someone alert to his awakened state. A soft female voice, different from the darkened void he was stuck in, made it towards his right ear. Ace-kun, questioned the female voice. Rina, questioned another female voice in Ace's left ear, though sleepy. Why are you yawns up? I thought I heard Ace-kun, Taru, said the first female voice. Rina. Groaned the other female voice. Taru, you thought you saw him twitch this morning too, Rina. Demo, said Rina, her voice soft and worried. Ace-kun has been out for months. I just want him to be well. We all do, said Taru softly. Demo, you know that Ace-san has been impelled by that admiral. Pluto said so. It will take more time for him to heal, even with the help of Mercury's operation on his body. Ace blinked mentally as he heard the planet names being spoken by this, Taru. He knew that his little brother's fiancé, his two female best friends, lived with sailor guardians that had planetary names, but they couldn't have been dead. He made sure the Marines, the government, didn't know his ties with the Silver Moon Kingdom Island. He also made sure the Whitebeard pirates didn't know about this, even though they were nakama. So, to hearing two sailor guardians, planet names from each side made Ace question one thing. Was he really alive? Ace mentally glared because the only way to know for sure was to wake up. Ace was stubborn as he tried to move once more by moving his fingers first instead of lifting his whole arm like before. His fingers are twitching, Taru, said Rina, who felt twitching against her stomach. Whatever you say, said Taru, who mentally rolled her eyes before falling back to sleep. Taru never listens to me, pouts Rina, which made Ace mentally laugh. Demo, you are trying to wake up, nay Ace-kun. Another twitch of his right hand was all that this Rina could have an answer to. Rina giggled softly before settling right next to Ace's right arm. Rina whispered that it would be alright for him to sleep some more and try to wake up tomorrow morning. It was late evening that Ace started to wake up from his coma-like state. Shifting closer to Ace, Rina finally revealed that Hotaru, and herself will be with him in the morning before falling back asleep, soft snoring reaching Ace's right ear. Well, now I know that I'm alive due to the fact that Hotaru and Serenity are sleeping, beside me, thought the questioning Ace before he drifted back to sleep. The next morning, groaned Ace as light hit his face. He's waking up, said Serenity with a chirp. I guess you were right, Rina, said Hotaru, he was waking up from his coma. I told you so, said a smug Serenity. Ace didn't like that light was hitting his face. He also didn't like that the two female voices, which from last night's revelation are Hotaru and Serenity, were mock arguing about him being awake or not from a coma. Exclamation mark. Ace quickly shot up from the bed, sending the two females that were always by his side sprawling down to the soft carpet. A painful groan left Ace's mouth as he slowly moved his right arm over his stomach. Apparently, he could still feel the phantom pain from the magma fist that the Admiral sent through his body. Serenity quickly moved to Ace's side while Hotaru ran out of the room to get Mercury to check over him. Ace-kun, questioned Serenity softly. How am I? Questioned Ace. Thank Mercury and Hotaru for reviving you to life, said Serenity. Are revive? Questioned Ace as Serenity gently pushed Ace to have his back touch the bed's backboard. Nodded Serenity before her lips quivered. There were so much blood and you were hurt in. Sarah, trailed off Ace. Ace didn't really like seeing his future sister-in-law in tears. It was like that time when they were children, a bare-gutted Luffy right in front of Ace, Hotaru, and Serenity. That thought still sent shivers down Ace's spine just thinking about that before painfully moving to pull Serenity into his arms. Shifting so that Serenity wasn't crushing his phantom-like pains from his stomach, Ace slowly but surely lifted his left hand to pet Serenity's head in a calming manner. Shish, Sarah, said Ace softly, Mercury cured me, and I won't be dying anytime soon. Demo, why you did, whimpered Serenity. Demo, Mercury and Hotaru healed me, nay, questioned Ace, and I'm not going to throw this second chance away. I'll stay here on the island with you and see you marry my baka of an Odoto. What about your dream, questioned Serenity, why your pirate life? Don't throw that away because of. I'm not, said Ace firmly, besides, I think I'm staying here for a while since I'm kind of disabled. That's true, said Mercury as she came into the room with Hotaru, however, with a lot of physical therapy, you'll be up and running through these halls once more. Physical therapy, questioned Ace before addressing Hotaru, hey, Hotaru. Baka, said Hotaru with her face away from Ace, don't make Serenity worry again. I won't, said Ace before turning back to Mercury, so, how did I survive? By replacing some of your burnt insides, said Mercury frankly, along with Hotaru finding your soul and Serenity Jusama's help. Arigato, said Ace as he nodded his head in thanks, to you, Hotaru, and Serenity Jusama. You're welcome, said Mercury before narrowing her eyes. Now, don't get off of this bed until I deem you fit to start your physical therapy or else I will freeze you to the bed itself. Another month later in Ace's stubbornness. I really miss my Mara no Mi abilities, bemoaned Ace. It took a month of physical therapy, but Ace was finally walking around the hallways without help. It would have been about another month for Ace to finish physical therapy after his 1-month coma, but Ace was stubborn to get out of bed and walk about. It, however, never stopped Ace from bemoaning about losing his fruit's ability because without his fruit's abilities, Ace was now wearing shirts again, especially long-sleeve ones due to the change in weather. He hadn't worn any, especially once winter rolled by throughout his pirate career, and because it was snowing and was December, he felt colder than ever before. Most people would have hit Ace over the head for him to shut up about his fruit or cover his mouth to signal him that they were fed up with his complaints, but not Serenity. Serenity was just happy that Ace was feeling better. I mean, I could keep you and me warm with the Mara no Mi, pouted Ace. It's not the end of the world, said Serenity. Tell that to my freezing fingers, said Ace. Well, you didn't have to come with me to do some shopping, said Serenity. And let you get kidnapped by perverts, questioned Ace with a raised eyebrow. We aren't even on the Silver Moon Kingdom Island anymore. It was true that Serenity and Ace snuck down from their island to venture into a nearby one underneath them. Ace also knew that Serenity really wanted to find something, but he didn't know that it was for him. Both were walking around the square as vendors tried to tempt Serenity to buy their cheap jewelry or somewhat revealing clothes. Ace, even though he hated the cold, especially when both of them were on a winter island, was very protective over Serenity, just like his protective streak over Luffy. He knew that if Serenity left without one of the guards, who were conveniently off-planet to talk to neighboring solar systems, Serenity would have been kidnapped. Come on, said Serenity, let's head back. I didn't find what I wanted. Finally, said Ace, do you think the kitchens will gift us some hot cocoa? No doubt about it, said Serenity. Coming back from the island. Surprise, Ace-kun, san, Portgas-san, shouted everyone with different ways to say Ace's name, Tanjobi Omedito, happy birthday. Once Serenity and Ace came back from their impromptu visit to the winter island, Serenity led Ace down the hallways towards what Ace thought was the kitchens. Ace remembered exactly where the kitchens were, but Serenity grabbed Ace's hand and dragged him along for the ride. Ace and Serenity walked for a while until they finally got to the dining room that would lead them to the kitchens. Ace teased Serenity for getting lost, but Serenity pouted and said that Ace would have gotten lost too in the big castle. Chuckling in defeat, Ace pushed the doors open, only to jump in surprise when voices rang out happy birthday to him. What's all this? Questioned Ace. Since you don't like to celebrate your birthday on your actual day, said Hotaru, Serenity and I decided to make a birthday party for you in December. It's not even Christmas yet, said Ace who was holding back tears. Demo, we wanted to celebrate your birthday, said Serenity who smiled up at him. We are all happy that you are alive, Ace-kun. Ace didn't know what to feel. Of course, he hid his birth date from the Whitebeard pirates and never celebrated his birthday. He wasn't one to celebrate it, especially with Luffy and Sabo pestering him in childhood. Yet, this was very touching. He figured out that Serenity was the distraction because let's face it, Ace would have wanted to go and protect his future sister-in-law from the evils of the world that's underneath the kingdom. Glaring a bit at Serenity playfully, Ace turned to the aforementioned Sailor Guardians, Queen Serenity IV, and Hotaru with a smile. Arigato, everyone, said Ace. As for a present, said Queen Serenity, Ace, if you so choose to accept, I would like to grant you a planetary power to become a personal guardian to my Masumi. Honto ni RR really, questioned Ace, how are you going to do that? With the power of the Ginzui Sho, said Queen Serenity. Jinzui Sho, questioned Ace slowly. It was there that Queen Serenity finally told Ace about the powers of the Ginzui Sho that Serenity would inherit from her. She told him about the awesome powers of the crystal, but also told him the backlash of using said crystal to the max. Ace was hesitant in accepting after hearing the backlash. He really didn't want to be the cause of an unnecessary death because he would be granted powers stronger than any Akuma no Mi devil fruits could possess. Looking around the room, he could see that the Sailor Guardians were waiting for his answer. He could also see Hotaru smiling in acceptance of another guardian over Serenity. Finally, Ace turned his head to look into Serenity's eyes to see how she approved that he would become her so-called guard. He felt that if he agreed, there would be more fun times ahead with Serenity. Ace looked at the Queen and, with a smile, nodded his head in agreement. Hi, Serenity Jusama, said Ace, I will become Serenity's personal guardian. Excellent, said Queen Serenity, I am sure that you will protect my Masumi with all that you can. Of course, said Ace fiercely before proclaiming proudly, Serenity is like an Imoto to me. Then, Ace-san, said Queen Serenity as she raised the Ginzui Sho, relax and do not reject the powers that will be going through your very soul. 5 years later. I am thankful that you have been taken care of my baka of an Ototo, said the male. Demo, keep your hands off of my Imoto or else you will get a taste of my fiery fist again, Sanji. Ace, cried out, questioned the entire group with eyes bulging out. Yo, said Ace outwardly casually, yet inwardly hiding his nervousness. Chapter 9. Long introductions and meeting Usagi G. Ace, cried out, questioned the entire group with eyes bulging out. Yo, said Ace outwardly casually, yet inwardly hiding his nervousness. Serenity looked among the unfamiliar faces to see shock and disbelief in their eyes. She shifted her eyes at Ace to see that he was inwardly battling on what to do. Does he go up to Luffy and casually, yet awkwardly, show that it is him? Or does he go over to the so-called dead Sabo and berate him for not finding them sooner? There were so many options that Ace wanted to do that he forgot that there were two more options. The first was to rub the back of his head and talk to the Whitebeard pirates, making the Whitebeard pirates gather around him and berate him like a toddler in front of Hotaru, Serenity, and the others. The other, well, Serenity was the one who did that. She breathed in slowly before stepping in front of Ace and smiled at the crowd. "Konnichiwa," said Serenity with a warm smile, "and welcome to the palace of the Silver Moon Kingdom Island. Bows, I hope your stay will be pleasant." "Arigato, thank you for letting us stay here," said a nervous Nami who bowed back. "May I know your names?" questioned Serenity. "I know only 3 people, besides Ace and Hotaru, here. It will also be easier for me to room you all." "Of course, my lady," said Shanks, who tipped his head slightly. "My name is Shanks, and I am the captain of the red-haired pirates." "My name is Monkey D. Dragon," said Dragon roughly. "I lead the revolutionary army." "So, essentially," said a sarcastic Hotaru, the deadbeat dad and the father figure. "Taru-chan," chided Serenity as Ace burst out laughing. "Well, it's true," said Hotaru, who crossed her arms, a glare fixated in her eyes. The Whitebeard commanders were taken aback when they heard the familiar laugh coming out of Ace's mouth. Sabo was the same as well, because to them all, it had been a long time since they heard that laugh. However, that particular laugh also cemented that what they were seeing was indeed true. Ace was actually alive all this time. It also made the Whitebeard commanders slightly angry inside because Ace never once contacted them to tell them he was indeed alive. Sabo, however, knew that he couldn't fault Ace because he had amnesia at the time when he thought Ace was dead. Sabo slightly turned his eyes to Luffy only to mentally face palm at Luffy for laughing with Ace as Serenity berated Hotaru. "Anyways," said Serenity as she turned to look at the Whitebeard pirates expectantly. "My name is Marco," said Marco. "I am the new captain of the Whitebeard pirates." "Name's Jozu," said Jozu. "I am the 3rd Division commander." "Konnichiwa," said Vista. "I am Vista, the 5th Division commander." "My name is Blamenko," said Blamenko. "I'm the 6th Division commander." "Rikuyo," said Rikuyo, the 7th Division commander. "It is nice to meet you," said Namur, and the 8th Division commander. "Blenheim," said Blenheim, the 9th Division commander. "Name's Curiel," said Curiel. "I'm the 10th Division commander." "Kingdu," said Kingdu, the 11th Division commander. "Yo," said Haruta. "Name's Haruta, and I'm the 12th Division commander." "Atmos," said Atmos. "I am the 13th Division commander." "Jiru," said Jiru, 14th Division commander. "Fosa," said Fosa, 15th Division commander. "I love your hair," said Izo with a smile on his face. "Name's Izo, and I'm the 16th Division commander." "My fair lady," said Thatch. "I am Thatch, the 4th Division commander. Kneels in front of Serenity at your service, my lady." When the Whitebeard commanders introduced themselves, Ace couldn't help but wince inwardly when Marco introduced himself as the captain. It wasn't until the last commander introduced himself that Ace almost went off the handle. He could have sworn that Thatch died when Marshal D. Teach, otherwise known as Blackbeard, killed him a long time ago. Unless, Thatch was revived like how he had when Hotaru mysteriously grabbed him from that battlefield. Ace couldn't think more on it as Serenity grabbed his hand in support, hidden from view of the people in front of them. Hotaru also showed her moral support by placing a hand behind his back, indicating that she was with Ace as well. Ace could feel the warmth between the two girls who were situated in a way that protected Ace from the crowd, Serenity next to Ace and Hotaru slightly behind as a guard. Though, that warmth was pulled away abruptly when Luffy darted in front of Serenity, grabbed her other hand, and dragged her to meet with his nakama. "Come meet my nakama now," said Luffy. "Lu," groaned Ace and Sabo together, making the two look at each other. "He better not hurt her wrist when he did that," said Hotaru. "He knows that she is not built like he is." "I'm sure Lu wouldn't hurt her intentionally, Hotaru," said Sabo. "Yeah," agreed Ace, who fell in step with Sabo naturally. He's just excited to finally be able to show her his hand-picked nakama. "You do know that Pluto showed her his adventures, right?" said Hotaru with a raised eyebrow. "Don't remind me," groaned Ace and Sabo together. "What do you mean by show?" questioned Fosa. As Sabo and Ace unconsciously did the same thing by shivering in terror, Luffy and Serenity were near Luffy's nakama, Luffy telling Serenity that one more person was joining but never had gotten the confirmation. Serenity just nodded her head as she eyed the crew. Because of her empathy, she knew that Luffy's crew was pure-hearted, but that didn't mean she was going to stop scrutinize them. Luffy's crew, in Serenity's opinion, was a very much mixed group of friends as the blonde from before started to hit Luffy over the head for manhandling her. "Cut it out," yelled out the orange-haired woman who bonked Luffy and the blonde's heads together. "We are making a bad impression on Luffy's Imoto." Questioned Serenity with imaginary question marks going around her head. I'm not. Konnichiwa, interrupted the black-haired woman, my name is Robin. I am the archaeologist. Super, exclaimed the robot with blue hair, name's Frankie. I am the cybotic shipwright. Yo-ho-ho-ho, said the skeleton, my name is Brooke, and I am the musician. Creepy Bo, can I please see your panties? Exclaimed Serenity and Hotaru, who just came over to hear the introductions. Knock it off, yelled the angry orange-haired woman before she smiled at the two, I'm sorry for him. By the way, my name is Nami. I am the navigator to this rowdy crew. Zoro, said the green-haired man, the swordsman. I am the brave and mighty Usopp, exclaimed the long-nosed male, I am the sharpshooter. Konnichiwa, said the reindeer, my name is Chopper, and I am the doctor. Kawaii, thought Serenity and Hotaru as they turned to the last one. And I, mademoiselle, said the blonde, Sanji, the cook kneels before the two girls and grabs each of their hands. It is a pleasure to meet such fair maidens here on this island. Once more, before Sanji could even place his lips upon Hotaru and Serenity's hands, a fist struck Sanji hard, making him fly and hit a wall. Everyone stopped and blinked when they realized that it wasn't one, but three fists that hit Sanji. One was made of rubber while two had flames around their fists. Everyone, in sync, turned around to see the rubber fist recoiled towards Luffy while the other two pulled back. All three had dark glares directed at Sanji for once again flirting with Serenity. Hotaru was also an added bonus. It was the next statement from Luffy that got everyone reeling though. Don't touch my Imoto, chorused Sabo and Ace. Don't touch my fiancé and Hotaru, growled Luffy. Wait a minute, called out Thatch, fiancé. Nodded Luffy, who glared at his own crew member before going towards Serenity and pulling her towards him, making Luffy wrap his arms around Serenity, she's mine. Again with the possessiveness, groaned out Serenity. Lu, sighed Hotaru, Serenity is not an object. Demo, Hotaru, whined Luffy, who reverted back to being childlike. You heard her, Lu, said Ace sternly. Demo, Ace, whined Luffy, who still didn't wrap around his head that his oldest brother was alive and well. No buts, said Sabo, now, say sorry to Serenity for saying that she's your object instead of a person. Garp laughed as he witnessed what was going on. It was like the five in front of him were all pre-teens all over again. He could clearly remember Ace and Sabo having the same argument with Luffy when Serenity was around and some guy tried to flirt with her. No matter the age, the three were fiercely protective of Serenity, as well as Hotaru whenever she would be with Serenity on Dawn Island. Garp looked around to see the bewilderment on the others' faces and couldn't help but laugh louder. They just weren't used to how Ace, Sabo, Luffy, Hotaru, and Serenity functioned. He also spied that Luffy's crew looked quite embarrassed that they thought Serenity was Luffy's Imoto due to Ace calling her that beforehand. So, drawn out Shanks, this is your fiancé, Anchor. The princess of the Silver Moon Kingdom Island. Nodded Luffy with a wide happy grin. Princess, chorused everyone. Don't tell me you forgot what the invitation said, Yoi, said Marco, making everyone else, especially Luffy's crew, to flush redder in embarrassment. I didn't, sang Shanks. Wasn't talking to you, red-haired, bit back Marco. Princess, bemoaned out Haruta before lowering his head down, I can't believe I introduced myself like that in front of the princess. To be fair, said Curiel, we weren't introduced to her until Straw Hat proclaimed it after punching his own chef. So, Luffy, ground out Nami, why didn't you introduce us to your fiancé before we embarrassed ourselves? You didn't ask, said Luffy nonchalantly. Nami was about to hit Luffy over his head once more, but Luffy's saving grace came from his grandpa of all people. Garp knew that it was time to separate and into each other rooms. The overloaded information of Sabo being alive, then Ace, of all people, being alive were taking its toll on his brain. He could also eye that Ace was still nervous about being near his brothers and old pirate crew. He could also see that the Whitebeard pirates were itching to pull Ace away and interrogate him. So, to save Ace and Luffy at the same time, Garp cut in on Nami, almost hitting Luffy's head. Little princess, said Garp, can you please show us to our rooms? These old bones aren't what they used to be. Getting old, Oji, teased Ace, whose shoulders relaxed slightly. Bahahaha, laughed Garp, not that old, you brat. Besides, it was a long ride to get here with this old brat, gestures to Dragon, and meeting up with this other old brat. Points to Shanks. Demo, started Izo. Come on, said Hotaru, I will lead you all to your rooms. Turns to Serenity, doesn't Luffy have to meet the queen, Serenity? Ah, fibbed Serenity, I'm sure Garp, Jizan and Sabo will want to see her after all this time. What about Ace? Questioned Vista, who wanted to grab Ace. He cannot show you all to your rooms, said Hotaru, he is working. Working, exclaimed everyone else. Hotaru didn't elaborate as she waited for the talking to die down. Serenity gestured the 4 males to follow her as she walked to the right. Ace, who knew that working was actually being Serenity's personal guard, quickly fell in step behind Serenity while keeping an eye out. That was when everyone saw the new symbol behind his back. Where the Whitebeard pirate's pride and joyous mark was supposed to be was now a dragon with a weird symbol. The Whitebeard pirates were taken aback when they saw the new mark adorning the back of their supposed littlest brother from long ago. Sabo and Luffy, however, knew what that weird symbol symbolizes before looking at each other. Both males nodded before taking off to finally confront Ace and his miraculous alive status. "Come on," said Hotaru, who was going left, "let me show you to your rooms." "Hi," murmured everyone else who followed Hotaru. Later that day, in each individual rooms. "What kind of mark is that?" exclaimed Thatch in Marco's room. "Well, this is becoming an adventure on its own," murmured Shanks in his room. "Anchor's brothers are all alive." "How did Luffy manage to get a lovely lady as the princess?" yelled out Sanji in another room shared by the Straw Hat Men before lowering down to the ground. "He's an idiot." "So," said Sabo and Ace at the same time in Serenity's room, "how did you survive?"